FM and AM 950 The Fan, Rochester, an Odyssey sports station. The Sports Bar with Danger and Battaglia.
The rookie minicamp dates for the Bills, that's going to be May 10th to the 11th.
And really the key guy here is Dalton Kincaid. We almost got to start thinking of Dalton Kincaid as a receiver at this point.
Let's go! Mike Danger.
Hey, welcome to the Sports Bar. Guys, thanks for having me on. It's me, Boston Scott.
Gene Battaglia.
I don't think I've ever seen you dance.
It's not pretty. Danger, you want to join me?
What a pro wants.
Here's a guy.
Is RIT open?
Breaking news.
Ow!
Go time. Amerks Crunch starting at 7 tonight. Game 3.
The Edmonton Oilers closed out the Kings 4-1 in Game 5, and the Stars took a 3-2 lead on Vegas with a 3-2 home win.
Mavericks leaning on Luka Doncic to take control of the series.
Pete Alonso was out 1-0, baby. Come Magic.
Oh, who cares?
The code word is Yahtzee. And Daddy gets to go home early.
We'll talk. Love you. See you later.
Daddy needs some new shoes.
I miss Horvath and John Ram.
Oh, yeah.
Wow.
We appreciate you checking out the Sports Bar with Danger and Mr. Krabby Ass.
95.7 FM and AM 950 The Fan, Rochester.
I forgot about that. I forgot about how our conversation ended last night. The story that you told.
That was ALWP.
That was actual laughter was produced. Yeah, you feel free to use that. ALWP. LOL is just disingenuous. LOL is too easy. Anybody can write LOL. Most of the time, I'd say 99% of the time somebody hits you with an LOL, they're not actually laughing out loud. Or if they hit you with the emoji with the crying tears, not really crying tears. That's why I'm a fan of the ALWP.
So it was the story right at the end of the show yesterday where, because our caller John teased me up for it, I'm not going to tell you how he teed me up for it. I'll get to that. But Danger starts laughing. Okay, thanks for listening. Hit the commercial, and you're still laughing afterward. I'm like, I'm glad I can make you laugh at my expense.
No, because Mr. Krabby Ass is just perfect. I want to change the name of the show to Danger and Mr. Krabby Ass. Which I'm joking. You know I'm busting your chops.
You're busting, that's a sign of acceptance.
That's
if you're
right.
Busting somebody's chops. So this goes back to draft night. And since we get back on Friday, and what are we talking about? Like, oh my gosh, the Bills didn't draft anybody. Oh my gosh. Hey, they traded with the Chiefs. No time on Friday to bring up this story, but this happened draft night too. So I am on X, and I just thought I'd have a little fun because I'm watching, the crowd in Detroit, and everybody's like, wow, this is so great. Look at how wonderful this is. Everybody out there. And I just put this out there. I'm like, really? Like, this isn't a concert. It's not a ball game. You're not getting a selfie or an autograph. What exactly is this for you other than just standing around for 4 hours?
I have a point I'm going to make, but I want you to continue with your story.
Okay.
Don't let me forget.
Okay. Fine. Yeah, so the draft, how many? 500,000 people, 700,000 over the weekend, whatever it was. They're showing all these shots, and then sometimes you get a take that gets in the algorithm and starts bouncing around. Then all of a sudden, one of our listeners tweeted like, hey, they're talking about you on the show. I'm like, well, I'm out at the Bill Graves tap room with Duffy that night. I'm like, I don't know what they're saying, and I'm getting more notifications. And I realize, what show? Oh, I'm BetMGM tonight, which we carry on here.
On the Fan, yeah.
On the Fan. And I'm like, what are they saying? Well, apparently, 2 of the 3 hosts agreed with me, and 1 did not.
Now, if you're not familiar, BetMGM Tonight airs weeknights when we don't have Amerks Hockey or St. John Fisher. You hear it from 7 to 11.
Yeah.
It's Trista Crick, who we've had on the show many, many times. Ryan Horvat, who we've had on the show many, many times. And Nick Ashu, who we've never had on the show, but Nick is good. They're a fun show, the 3 of them together.
Yeah, and so, and it's like they talk a little betting, but it's just 3 people hanging out watching the game
and
together.
a lot of reacting to the betting that they're making.
Yeah, it's a fun show. It's a different way of looking at sports talk. By the way, the Mets is tied in.
Okay, stay focused.
Okay, so 2 of the 3 agree with me, and the other calls me Mr. Krabby Ass. Now, the one guy I don't know, I've never talked to, Nick Ashu, but
he agreed with you.
Yeah. And I'm thinking, oh my gosh, it was Trista who called me. And I sent Trista a note. I'm like, Trista, did you just call me? Nope, that was Horvat. I'm like, okay. Or Horvat, or how we say. I call him Horvat. Well, Later on that night, Danger, I get an apology from Ryan. Hey, I was just trying to have fun. Like, no problem, buddy. No problem. We're friends. Everything's all cool. Now I'm regretting telling you that story.
I just need to know how he said it. Like, oh, that guy in Rochester? Yeah, I know him. He's Mr. Krabby Ass.
Why don't you call and ask for the audio?
Oh, it's so good. The point I was going to make, because you mentioned it, there's thousands and thousands of people there. And we know that the NFL largely is a made-for-TV production. Here's my take, and I don't think this is a stretch, and I think if I say this, I know I'm not being original in saying this. I think when they, on TV, pan to each team's group of superfans that are there at the draft, these are all plants. These are not real people. These are not real fans. They have been equipped. They have been coached. They know how to react when the camera is on them. They don't know anything about the players that are being drafted. They're just told, no matter what, react, and react in a positive way. Did you see anybody upset?
No.
Did you see any fan questioning why? Did any Falcon fan, when they announced Penix, when they panned over, did the Falcon fans be like a look of dumbfounded confusion? Like, what did they just do? What? Huh?
Yeah, come to think of it, I missed that. I missed the Jet fan going, oh, well, they must know what they're doing to pass on Dan Marino.
Every fan that they show is in makeup. Every fan that they show has gear. Every fan that they show has some sort of, accessory or merch or something. They are what the NFL deems to be the super fan. This is how we wish all of our fans looked and acted in a positive way with all of this merchandise. I think they're all plants. I think they're all paid. I think they're all coached. I think they're all equipped by the NFL. I don't believe for a second that those are actual real fans. Now, I know real fans go. They invite real fans to go, and there are real fans of the team there. But when you're talking about for the TV production, for what we see when we're not there, and they pan to Bill's superfan that are there, and I'm telling you, those feel like plants. They don't feel like real fans.
Or they're vetted beforehand. And the first time I'm thinking this happened was years ago. It was the Josh Allen draft. And it was either the second or third round. It wasn't the first round. But going up there to make the selection was Andre Reed. And Andre Reed, before he names the selection, is like, hey, and I want to give a shout out to Bills Mafia. And every Bills Mafia fan knows this man, Pancho Villa. And they go, wow. And they're like, I never heard of Pancho Villa, and there he is doing his thing and everything like that. And I think a lot of us, admit it, before that night you never heard of that guy, but that was a story the NFL wanted to get behind, God rest his soul.
Wow, you took it even deeper. I mean, I didn't realize that they would conjure up a whole storyline in a character.
Where did we first learn about Pancho Villa?
I feel like I remember seeing him during sideline cutaways during games. Like you just would.
Nope,
you never saw.
I want to say no.
You never saw the sombrero.
Nope.
Really?
No. Somebody correct me if I'm wrong, but that was his introduction to the world.
I feel like I remember seeing him on the sideline cutaways. And then when he was introduced as this super fan at the draft, yes, then he kind of took on a whole different level of celebrity. And then, of course, the story attached to Pancho Villa captivated everybody, and everybody got on board with it. But I just found it hilarious as I was watching the draft, nights 1 and nights 2, especially when you get to night 2 and you're in the second round, third round, and the casual fan doesn't know who your team is going to take in the second. You have no idea who most of these guys are, but yet every single time the camera gets panned onto this group of super fans, they all have the same look on their face. They all have the same reaction. They're all geared up and they're all face painted, all the stuff. I'm like, I wouldn't put it past the NFL, knowing that this is a made-for-TV production, knowing exactly when to pan, to who to pan to, and here's how you're going to act, and we'll pay you with tickets, or we'll pay you with whatever.
And you could record my take on that right now and run it back to me 5 years, 10 years. whenever Buffalo's number comes up to host the draft, and I hope it would happen, and we could picture how that would look like. I hope it wouldn't be at the stadium. I actually hope they would do it downtown in front of City Hall, right in that square.
Dude, I don't think they're ever going to do it. I think the weather's too dicey. I just don't think they can do it.
They did it in Cleveland. It was a crappy night, but because they have that big canopy or whatever it is, you really didn't get that feel. So they shot it in a different way, so you didn't realize, oh, wait a second, it's actually 45 and kind of gray out, and we don't want to show that.
Yeah, and that's, I think, what you get. I mean, you could get a day like today at the end of April when you traditionally hold the NFL draft, but you're weather dependent, man, and that's a tough thing. I mean, the NFL will make it look, I guess my point is the NFL will make it look good for TV no matter what, and that includes the fans or lack of fans that are in attendance. They will find a way to make it look full. They'll find a way to make it look like these fans are super engaged and they're super fans and they're all wearing their jerseys and they've all got, like, where are the regular people that, maybe want to go to the draft and not, and be excited for the team, but not wear the the extra, the thick chain with the Bills logo on it or whatever it is, right? Like, no, we have to make sure we get those people on the TV. We got to get the super fans on the TV to show their fandom, their super fandom.
So you're going to book Ryan Horvath to bring him on because you called me Mr. Krabby Ass then?
No, I just want to change the name of the show to The Sports Bar with Danger and Krabby Ass. That's fantastic, man. I forgot about that. That was so much fun at the end of I didn't even know that had happened. I didn't know that they called you out for having the take that. And I'm kind of with Ryan on this one. Like, I'm not going to call you Mr. Krabby Ass over it, but I kind of think, like, if that was in our community, we would go. And it would be less about the actual draft. I know you're saying, I wouldn't go. I think we go to Jazz Festival, we go to Lilac Festival, we go to events that people go out to. Like, we go out. When we go out, we go out. And when training camp happens, it's sold out, right? Like, you can't get tickets to training camp. I think that we would go.
Well, okay, but at least they're offering you music or arts and what are they offering you other than, hey, people watching and you're with all the other, the camaraderie, blah blah blah, and here's a Bud Light or whatever.
Yeah, drinks.
What are they? That's it.
It's like a street fair or a festival.
It's like
we're a festival town. We go to these things all the time. There's arts and crafts, and you could say, what are they offering you at these arts and crafts festivals? I mean, they're offering you arts and crafts if you want to buy them, or you could just walk around, be social, run into people that you haven't seen in a while, find a group of friends, meet up with a group of friends, have a few cold ones. I think it would be fun. Mr. Krabby Ass.
Yes, I'd rather go to a game or a concert.
Yeah, sure. Speaking of going to games, well, there's a potential for a new way for Cleveland Brown fans to go to games. And this is happening throughout the NFL. There's a handful of teams right now that are rolling out artist renderings, starting to lay the foundation. It's almost like the Bills set a benchmark that everybody now has to kind of live up to.
It's kind of like, wait a second, if they could get this done in Buffalo,
right?
Like, why can't we get this done in Chicago, Kansas City, Cleveland?
Yeah, Spencer German from 92.3 The Fan in Cleveland will be stopping by. He's got some 585 roots. We remember Spencer from his time in Rochester. Spencer German from The Fan in Cleveland, our Odyssey Sports sister station, will stop by and give us the latest out of Cleveland here with the Cavs looking to advance with the Guardians, the first place Guardians.
Yeah.
And with the stadium plans there in Cleveland. We'll get Spencer's take on all of it when he joins us later on this afternoon, right around 4:25. Joining us later this hour, and we're long overdue for a conversation with our buddy, our superhero of the spread, Thor Nystrom of Fantasy Pros and Betting Pros. We want to get with Thor just to get his take on this Bills draft class. We'll go player by player.
Yeah, I mean, Thor is an encyclopedia. Thor is not from Western New York. Thor will just kind of give it to us straight. I like that he's getting some national run here, too, because people are kind of getting dialed in. I'm like, that's our guy. So Thor Nystrom joining us, Fantasy Pros, Betting Pros. That's where he's stationed right now. And, yeah, I also want to get Like, was that a good move for Atlanta? Like that is going to be one of those that I think there's no middle ground. Either it's genius and they got their guy and who cares about Kirk Cousins, or, this franchise is going to be wallowing around here for 4 or 5 years. Thor Nystrom will give it to us here in a little bit.
You're in the Sports Bar with Danger and Battaglia. We appreciate you listening at 95.7 FM, AM 950. We sound our best in the free-to-download Odyssey app when you search out The Fan Rochester, or ask your smart device to play 95.7 The Fan. We've got a video stream up for you if you want to watch the Sports Bar. Find us on our YouTube channel at The Fan Rochester, also on Twitch, twitch.tv/The Fan Rochester. Always love engaging with you on X as well, at The Fan Rochester. I've never watched the TV show Succession, Gene. I know you have.
Well, qualify that. I watched 2 episodes.
Okay.
And it's so stressful. And I put it out there. Should I continue to plow through it, or should everybody says it's great, continue to plow through it? But it's one of those shows right off the bat where they're telling you up front, hey, these are wealthy people, and they're not good people. These are not characters that you would like. And so I'm trying to wonder, why would I continue to watch a show where I don't like any of these characters? Who am I? Well, people tell me the writing is excellent. It's on the list. I'll get back to it. But I think you and I are smart enough to understand that that's one of the hot shows right now, Succession.
Oh, yeah.
That's out there.
Sure. Does it feel like, given what we're learning?
Yes.
Oh.
Yes. I'll just cut you right off.
Okay.
Honestly, the Pegula family, there's problems that kind of started with Kim, unfortunately. And we have to give credit here, full credit, okay, to a guy that is a friend of the show, Tim Graham, The Athletic. He is always on top of these things. And his story kind of broke yesterday. So he had the story last week about the Pegulas, and then Bill's admitting as such, hey, they're going to sell part of the team. Well, comes this yesterday, and this is the part right up front, that Kim Pegula is incapacitated. That's it. She doesn't have the ability to make decisions on her own. The courts agreed. This happened back in March. That is, it's terribly sad, and we were hoping for some miracle recovery. So Kim is still with us, but you'll never see her again in the public eye. So that is terribly sad. And kind of going along with this, Terry Pegula has been named kind of the executor here. He's in charge here. So Kim's possessions, her wealth has been put into, basically kind of a holding pattern here, into a trust, if you will.
He's the guardian of the person and property of Kim, his wife.
Yes. So that's the legal phrase there.
Yes.
So basically, all right, well, she's not available now. So when you go back, Danger, and I go back to how did we learn about Kim Pegula and what exactly happened here?
Well, we knew she was sick. We knew something had happened.
Something terribly wrong.
Nobody talked about it.
Nobody talked about it.
The Bills didn't put out a statement. Nobody talked. I mean, the Bills put out basically we respect privacy. Don't bother us. Don't ask us about it. We're not going to answer any questions about it. We remember that, and we remember us. I remember saying, if somebody really wanted to find out what was wrong or what happened, it wouldn't be that challenging. You could go down to Florida. You could find out what hospital they're in. You could find out what happened. But nobody wanted to do that because doing that would be in direct violation of what the Bills have asked you to do, which is don't report on this, respect our privacy.
Right. That's always a difficult thing. And the line here is, okay, we respect your privacy, but you also received $800 million in public funding, so we can't ask questions about that's all. Like it's debatable, at the very least. I'm going to read you the quote here from Jessica Pegula. This was from the Players Tribune when she explained what exactly happened and kind of disclosing everything. And then she puts in this in her line. My mom always wanted me to be involved. She wanted me to learn and eventually do what she was doing. After that quote, Tim Graham writes this. Within 3 months of the column, Tyler Gahagan, the son-in-law, was fired.
Jessica's husband.
And Laura Pegula was given an equity stake in the Bills. No member of the Pegula family has commented publicly about Kim's condition otherwise. Okay. So he is inferring. Okay, let's just stop there because I didn't know this before yesterday. The son-in-law got fired. Tyler Gahagan, Fredonia State, 2011, self-made guy. Yeah, hey, good for him. And he gets in, he meets Jessica, falls in love, gets a job in Pagula Sports Entertainment. And then 3 months after that drops, he's fired by Terry? Who does that? Danger. Like, would you ever, you have 2 daughters, would you ever fire, what would it take? If Tyler Gahagan is being a good husband and a good, I'm sorry, you could say, it's none of your business. Is anybody not fascinated by that?
Well, I think because of what you said earlier, the fact that so much state money is going into the Pagula's new stadium, it's none of our business, sure, but the way they conduct their business is kind of our business. Like, that is fascinating. I remember when they announced Lindy Ruff, and everybody's like, hey, who's the woman that's standing next to Terry? Like, nobody had really seen who that was. We saw the other guy. We're like, oh, that's Gwelly. Okay, Gwelly's up there for the announcement of Lindy Ruff. But who's the woman? Oh, that's Terry's daughter, his oldest daughter from his first marriage.
Who was never around in public settings in front of the camera when Kim and the children were there. And you have that dynamic, too, that we don't know anything, and you could say, Gene, that's none of our business. Well, yeah, Laura Pagula was gifted 1% of the franchise, and they're doing this for estate planning. None of the other children were.
You have to do it by NFL rule. You have to kind of lay out a succession plan. The NFL wants to know, like, if something happens to one of our billionaire owners, who's going to steer the ship moving forward? And then you have to wonder, so she's given a small percentage here as just as a way to appease the NFL's rules, just so you could say, no, there's a succession plan in place. And she can obviously take on more of that if that becomes the case. But when you're selling a quarter of the team, is part of the sale of the quarter of the team, is there a contingency in there where, yeah, I'll buy a quarter of the team, but at some point, I would like to talk about buying more of the team.
Course.
I would like to talk about having that 51% controlling interest of the team.
What timeout? You don't need 51%. The NFL has lowered the threshold to 30%. So if if you have minority owners, say like the kids get 10, 10, 10, whatever it is, you do not need 51%, a true majority.
Wow.
They've lowered that threshold.
So this is a fascinating story, and it's one that it's a conversation I want to continue to have throughout the course of the afternoon here, Gino, because there's a lot that we didn't get the chance to dive into here in terms of, more about Laura, more about Jessica Pagula, and what we thought was a very brave thing. I thought that the Players Tribune piece was bold. I really she put herself out there, put her family out there, and it sure seems like she did that against the wishes of her dad, and they've kind of, if you're connecting dots, it feels like they've been punished for doing that, for airing out the family's personal business.
It feels like we have succession going on right now.
Yeah.
A lot going on out there.
Thor Nystrom, Fantasy Pros and Betting Pros. We'll talk about the Bills 2024 draft class next. You can join us at 866-4326, 585-866-4FAN.
Sports Update.
It's Game 3 tonight for the Rochester Americans in the Salt City. Tied at 1 game each. Seth Appert on being on the road.
You really need to attack each game like it's its own game. But our guys, we've been good on the road all year. We've been good with our backs to the wall all year. We've been good in this building most of the year. So there's some confidence that you can draw from that, sure.
Coverage begins at 7 o'clock with Don Stevens and Brian Duff tonight here on The Fan. The Rochester Red Wings gave up 8 runs in the top of the first today at Innovative Field, and they're trying to complete the comeback. They're down 8-6 as they are in the 8th. On the Major League scoreboard, Yankees after 8 are trailing in Baltimore 7-2. On this getaway Thursday, the Mets have rallied. They're tied now with the Cubs in the 8th, 5-5. Giants leading at Fenway 3-1 in the 7th. Nationals trailing at Texas 3-0 in the 4th. Gene Battaglia and the sports leader, The Fan, Rochester.
Straight up with no chaser. You're in the Sports Bar with Danger and Battaglia on the Sports Leader, 95.7 FM and AM 950 The Fan, Rochester.
I think I take a lot of bits and pieces from different players. I think the size and weight that I am, being able to move laterally and vertically the way I do, I don't think it's just one particular guy I can put myself to. So I'd like to take different pieces from everybody's game and implement it on what I already been gifted by God.
Here's Bill's second-round draft pick, wide receiver Keon Coleman out of Florida State, as we welcome in Thor Nystrom from Fantasy Pros and Betting Pros into the Sports Bar. Unbelievable work, as always, this draft season, Thor, and we wanted to get your take on the Buffalo Bills draft class of 2024, starting with Coleman, a move that a lot of Bills fans kind of scratched their head over. What was your takeaway from the end of round 1 where the Bills traded out of 28 with Kansas City, who selected Xavier Worthy, only to end up with the first pick of the second round and their selection of Coleman?
Yeah, well, and awesome to join you guys as always. As far as that goes, on my board I was just a little bit lower on Keon Coleman. I had him 46. But certainly see what the Bills see in him, which I'll get into in a second. But the first thing I wanted to say about that is I appreciated the process of trading down the ones and then taking advantage of another one of these dope GMs that we have in the NFL, Dan Morgan, just wanting to throw free draft equity at them so that the Bills could take the player they were going to anyway and pay him multiple $1 million less over the length of that rookie contract. Brandon B and crew must have been giggling in the war room when Dan Morgan offered that one. Okay, we'll move up 50 spots on day 3 and pay our guy a little bit less. As far as Coleman goes, he's the guy who always goes in round 2 every year, and it's the type of profile where when it hits, you get big time value on that slot, and then when it misses, that's where you're embarrassed that you made that selection. Like the examples of hits that he resembles, T. Higgins. Probably a closer middle of the row one would be like a Cortland Sutton, and then obviously on the opposite end of the spectrum, it would be like a J.J. Arcega-Whiteside. The thing that Keon Coleman does not do is separate from people in the intermediate range or really at all. In fact, last year he was 0th percentile PFF in separation rate, but that's not really his game. He ran the 4.61 at the combine, and so some people were like, "Oh, he's not a good athlete." It's like 2 years ago, he was on the basketball team with Tom Izzo at Michigan State, and that was the same year on the field on the college gridiron where he was outproducing Jaden Reed, who was about the veteran on that team, who was about to be a second-round pick. And then last year when Keon Coleman and Jordan Travis were both healthy on the same field, that Keon Coleman looked like a star. Keon Coleman's season didn't go down until he first suffered an injury in November, causing him to miss a game. He came back, wasn't 100%. Then, of course, right away, Jordan Travis, the season-ending injury to him. And then FSU's backup quarterback play was an abomination. That Keon Coleman, the thing he does, it harkens back to his basketball days. You send him downfield, he's going to get higher than the other guy. He knows how to box him out, and it's a rebound. And no one's getting higher than Keon Coleman. And his hands are awesome as well. He's super-duper comfortable in those situations. But and then he's going to come down with it. He's going to pin you to his back, and he's going to come down with it. Last year, just speaking to this really quickly, the situation and what it devolved into in November for Keon Coleman with the terrible quarterback play. Last year, he was targeted 87 times at Florida State. Only 55 of those were considered catchable by the charting. Of those 55, Keon Coleman caught 50 balls. 11 went for touchdowns. 28 others turned into first downs. You got a guy with a bazooka for an arm and Josh Allen who just chucks that thing downfield. Keon Coleman will get into one-on-one situations downfield where there's just not many human beings alive that can get higher than him and extend further than him and have the ball skills downfield. So that's why you're going out and getting Keon Coleman.
It's interesting, Thor, because the pick it felt to me like it was inconsistent with what we thought the Bills were looking for in a wide receiver, and mainly that ability to separate. That's what we've always heard Brandon Beane say they look for in a wide receiver. And I know you and Matt Harmon have had conversations, reception perception. I really enjoyed a piece that he did on Coleman and how his college profile related to some current pros that are having success in the NFL, that it's not necessarily a prerequisite for success in the NFL to be able to separate. You have a guy like an Amon-Ra St. Brown who in college profiled very similarly, his skill set profiled very similarly to a Keon Coleman, yet the takeaway that Harmon put out there on reception perception was that if you were going to use Coleman in any way to have success in the NFL, it would be in that kind of big slot role that we've seen guys like Amon-Ra St. Brown or the guy in Cincinnati, the free agent that's now into
T. Higgins.
You want that kind of big slot guy. The Bills sure seem like they're going to use him as that X on the outside. Are they judging him wrong, or is it just as simple as what you just said? Hey, 17, throw it deep and let our guy go up and get it.
Yeah, no, I can appreciate where Harmon's coming from on that, but for me, he's an outside guy because the utility that is the best with Keon Coleman's profile, it's hitting dingers. That's why you want him there. Is he as fast as Adonai Mitchell? No, but the ball skills are better downfield, and he's more consistent with it. Just because again, he's so comfortable in those situations and going up and getting it. The intermediate stuff, if you can hit him on the hands and in space. He's better after the catch than you would think. And in fact, Bills fans are gonna love this aspect of his game. He's one of those guys who will hurdle defenders that try to go low on him in the open field. And he has those basketball hops from the gym when Tom Izzo's Spartan basketball team still. So as well, of course downfield, but also with the ball in his hands there. But yeah, just because I wouldn't put him in the slot because I think that full time you could do it situationally, but full-time, I want my guy in the slot to be someone who is creating that separation in the intermediate range and yada, yada, whereas Keon Coleman's not going to do that. I want to leverage his ability to win downfield.
Yeah, Thor, we as fans here are always going to compare Keon Coleman to Xavier Worthy, and you can imagine what it was like on our show on that Friday afterward, or for the Bills Mafia. How dare you do a deal with the Kansas City Chiefs, and it actually might help the Chiefs if that's the wide receiver that could fit in that offense. So just your unbiased opinion here, Thor. How does Xavier Worthy fit in that Kansas City offense?
It's going to be fun, because he's obviously they're sort of hearkening back to the Tyreek Hill thing, although the speed of Worthy obviously broke the combine record for 40 time. His game more evokes Deshaun Jackson. If he hits that's his bonanza ceiling. But, I don't mind what the Bills did there. I probably would have preferred in their slot Ladd McConkey. Speaking to the separation thing, he was the best in the class at that. He's the efficiency monster guy. But if you're going to go with the downtown dude, that's where Coleman, you can compare him with almost anyone in the class in terms of that. So, that's obviously what they were prioritizing there. They picked up the extra draft equity to go down and do it. And there's the fall off in salary as well when you go from the end of the first round to the top of the second. So you're paying that guy a lower slot as well.
Thor, the turnover on this roster has been well documented, and therefore with the 10 draft picks you have and the 10 players that you picked, we've got to expect that some of these guys are going to come in and contribute right away. The most compelling draft pick for me from the Buffalo Bills was their 5th-round selection of Cedric Van Pran-Granger, the center out of Georgia, because when you moved on from Mitch Morse, you've made it look like the plan is to shift McGovern over to center, inject David Edwards in as your left guard, which would essentially disrupt not one, not two, potentially 3 positions on the offensive line if you're the Buffalo Bills. Or you could just insert Cedric Van Pran-Granger and you've disrupted 1. What are your thoughts on that player as a prospect and whether or not the Bills could potentially get him on the field sooner rather than later?
So I'm going to say first off, I was a little bit lower on Van Pran than almost anyone else. So I might not be the right guy to speak to this. Again, it was just a little bit lower on him, but he was in a very good situation at Georgia. He was the 3-year starter in the pivot at Georgia, so you have to give him that. Obviously, 2 of those 3 seasons, Georgia won the national title. But he had a lot of talent around him, a lot of experience. The play did improve as a senior. I'll give him that. But a little slight for a center. Obviously, he has the long dimension, so you like that. But he has the short arms. He's tall, but he has short arms and below average agility. Allowed 0 sacks the past 2 seasons on the positive side of it. But if you look at the advanced data, it goes the other way. I mean, there's things on both sides of this evaluation that raise the red flag, or else it makes you feel positive about it. But he had an 11th percentile pass blocking grade on true pass sets since the start of 2022. And I'm wondering if he has a lower body bend to improve his leverage against power, and then that lateral agility thing. So the profile for me, it was just a little bit hazy in terms of that. So that's why I knocked him down a little bit. It's not like again, especially you compare it to the consensus board, paid a totally fine price for that. But those are some of my concerns of this game.
Yeah, Thor Nystrom, our guest here in the Sports Bar. The second-round pick for the Buffalo Bills, Cole Bishop, the safety out of Utah. And it's a new world for us here, Thor. For so many years, Poyer and Hyde, the 2 safeties. And, Jordan Poyer now down in Miami, and Micah Hyde hasn't announced his decisions yet. If he does come back, who knows what he'd be available. I think we're all expecting him to retire. So with that being said, there's going to be some competition. Your thoughts on Bishop? Is he more of a strong safety, a free safety? How does he project here in the pros?
I play him in center field, but it's a guy with a versatile skill set who can do a whole bunch of different things. So, you bring him in and you see, but that's where I would start him. And what I love about him, the safeties that I'm typically attracted to, and maybe this is because I'm coming to you guys live from Minneapolis, and I've had the pleasure of, over the last 8 years, almost every single season, I either got to watch Antoine Winfield Jr. or Tyler Nubin, who was the first safety off the board this year, up close. The stadium's like a mile from me. And those 2 guys shared one thing in common, which is that they had that ever rare thing of they would get the head start on every single play because they would get tells from the beats after the snap, and then it would trigger something in their head, and they'd be headed downhill in the correct direction or towards the right receiver in coverage, whatever, before an analogous player in their same spot would, maybe a better athlete. But when you're getting a head start in a race that's only 10 to 15 yards every single time, it's funny how often you're going to end up winning that race. Cole Bishop's a guy like that, where he sees things develop before an analogous player playing in his position would. So he gets head starts. He's also a really good athlete. So you get the head start, and you have the athleticism with him, which Winfield and Nubin were both dinged for. But with Bishop, 6'2", 206, 9.88 RAS, and like I said, the versatility, and then that downhill explosion. Once he sees it, he triggers real quick with the decision making, and then he's flying downhill.
The second skill position player that the Bills selected, Thor, behind Keon Coleman, was in the 4th round. That was running back Ray Davis out of Kentucky, and I think everybody immediately gravitates to his story. They love a good story. They love the background of this player. What are the Bills getting in Davis? Because it feels an awful lot like what they already have in James Cook, which might be exactly what they're looking for, when I think a lot of people were saying, we need a bigger bruiser between the tackles kind of guy. Maybe Davis can do some of that as well. What's your takeaway on Davis?
Well, I actually, some people were tossing out that this was like a bad landing spot for Davis. The way that I see Davis, and I was a little bit lower on him too, Davis, and I'm rooting for him as hard as anybody. But I wondered about the limitations with him. What I like about him, it's the early down stuff, and I was just wondering if he was going to get into a situation where that was going to be too crowded. He's worked on, and I'll give him a ton of credit. He both worked on his body. After initially he was at Temple and Vanderbilt. And he sort of had to, you had to have the extra body armor on you, because in both those situations, he was getting ganged up on with 8-man boxes, because he was like the one-man show on those teams. But then when he goes to Kentucky, he lost weight, got more explosive, had worked on the receiving element of his game and improved with that. But obviously with James, I'm not sure if he goes into any NFL situation where in the backfield he is the best receiver there. Clearly, heading to this team, he is not the best receiver on the Buffalo Bills roster. But you do have a clear opening to get some early down looks, bite into that timeshare. I think he potentially could do that here. So for me, I thought that was at least a good landing spot for Ray Davis, and of course, a kid that we're all going to be rooting for.
Yeah, no doubt about it. Thor, I'm going to lump everybody else in, into the last question about this draft class and the remaining draft picks. Well, you have the third round out of Duke here, the tackle Dwayne Carter. You have Eddie Olofascio. I've been practicing that, the linebacker out of Washington. Javon Solomon out of Troy. Tylen Grable out of UCF. You have Daquan Hardy, the corner out of Penn State. And then the project, who has never played it down in football, Travis Clayton. Any of these picks stand out to you?
Yeah, I like some of those day 3 ones. The name that you were practicing, I like that pick. I'll let you say it, but I like that kid. Yes, I like his game, and I also like Javon Solomon. Javon Solomon, I'm a big fan of, especially falling to the end of round 5 like he did. I thought that there was great value on that. Both those guys are unorthodox type prospects in evaluation, so I understood why they fell down the board a little bit. But I think that they were really good values where you end up getting him. For instance, Javon Solomon, I had him 120th on my board. They get him 168. I realize he's short. He's the sawed-off kind of a guy, and he's playing on the edge, obviously. But he racked up enormous numbers there at Troy, and he's very long, with the arm length, especially for a guy who's 6'1" and a decent athlete as well. And he plays with the hair on fire. Like he's coming every single snap, max effort, coming after the quarterback, and he's got some bend as well. There are traits there of a guy who is going to be able to get after the quarterback in the NFL. You're going to have to work around the frame stuff and just see how that works. And he's going to have to keep working, probably add a little bit of weight as well. But I like the profile, especially at the price point they got it.
Thor Nystrom, Fantasy Pros and Betting Pros, our guest in the Sports Bar. Thor, you mentioned it. You're about a mile away from the University of Minnesota there in Minneapolis, and your Vikings made a move for their future franchise quarterback. Did they get it right with J.J. McCarthy, or were you of the belief that they should have done whatever they could do to get up in the draft and maybe take a Drake May at 3 there with New England?
They made the correct decision, and I'm happy that Kwesi drew that line, is what the reports are, that they had the final offer, and then they balked it going to where what New England wanted for that pick. I would have done the same that he did, and further, I think he did better than I would have done, because I don't know if I would have had the guts to wait it out with the New York Giants on the clock when they had put it out there, we'll take the quarterback, and even J.J. McCarthy in advance of the draft, they asked him, like, who's been spending the most time with you? He's like, the Giants. Yeah, so I don't know if I would have had the guts to do it, but Kwesi called their bluff, and that allowed, then McCarthy, of course, he filters down a little bit, and instead of it costing your second first-round pick and your 2025 first-round pick to move up into the top 5 to go and get a guy like that, it was only a couple mid-round picks, and you even got one back during that, in that one spot move up with the Jets. So I love that move. Then you retain your second first-round pick. They used that along with some other mid-round picks in order to move up, get Dallas Turner when he was falling down the board. Just because of the environment we were in with the record 14 straight offensive guys off the board to begin the draft. Dallas Turner was a guy all spring long that sportsbooks had as the prohibitive favorite against the rest of the field to be the first defender off the board. So that shows, the Vikings obviously loved Turner. I mean, they were talking about that, and I think he was the highest defender on their board. So obviously they were thrilled with that move as well. And then you retain your first-round pick next year, and based on the 1-year reset that they're going to be in this coming season before all their dead cap comes off, and they can start really having fun in 2025. I think it was really important to keep that first-round pick because you did not want to be in that nightmare situation that the Panthers were in, where you just tossed a whole bunch of equity at someone, and then you have a nightmare season, then all of a sudden that team is getting a prodigy of a quarterback prospect with the slot that should have been yours.
Thor, on the last one, and follow my line of questioning here. So, Thor, when do you come up with your first big board here? Is it December? Is it January? When would you say the process kind of really begins for you?
I'll be making my database for the next draft class probably in a month, and then I just start. So my question is, you're already on this, okay? And I would think that a lot of NFL teams are already on this too. And all right, when you want to come up with your first mock draft, is that in January? Is it in February for the NFL team? I'm going to the Atlanta
Falcons? Because at some point you would have thought, hey, we really like this Penix guy. Why are we spending $150 million here on Kirk Cousins? Or did it get to the process like, hey, you know what? It's in the month of March. We really should kind of draft this guy. Like, what honestly do you think was going through their minds down there in Atlanta?
That I'm waiting for the 30 for 30 on that, or the Netflix series. I think we're going to have to wait for that. The problem is I haven't heard. I don't think anyone's heard an explanation that makes any rational sense, and the reason for that is there is no explanation that would jive that. If you love Penix as much as you did, well, great. You have the 8th pick. There was no scenario ever where Michael Penix was going in the top 7 picks. That was not going to happen. So you knew that he was going to be available there. And Michael Penix is not like a project guy where it's like, oh, we got to let him marinate on the bench. He's the come in right away and play guy. Yeah. He was in college for 6 years. He was starting for almost all that time under one of the best offensive minds that we have in college football. So good that he was in NIA football 6, 7, 8 years ago, and now he's the head coach of Alabama, Kalen DeBoer. Kalen DeBoer got Penix where he is now. Like I said, there's nothing else there to untap, and then you select him there. Great. Again, that's awesome if you want to do that. But that was an outcome that you would have known you could have done in advance. So why 1 month before that did you give $180 million to Kirk Cousins and guarantee that for at least a minimum 2 years he has to be in that QB1 spot, but maybe 3? If you get out after 2, you have to take an enormous dead cap hit in that third season. So really it's a 3-year commitment unless there's going to be pain on the back end that third year. I just don't understand the philosophy, the thought process behind it. I don't think that there was a thought process behind it. The guy who's running that room, Terry Fontenot, he does that every single year. He just torches assets. This is the 4th straight year that they've had a top 8 pick. In those 4 years, he's taken a tight end, he's taken a running back. Now he's taken a guy who will be a multi-year backup quarterback, and by the time he can finally get a chance, his rookie contract's going to be done. He's going to be closing in on 30. Terry Fontenot, in my opinion, should have been fired on the spot. I think that there's a really good chance that he has overseen his last draft process.
You know, Thor, while we're piling on bad teams.
Taking the year nominee right there. Fire him on the spot.
While we're piling on bad teams, I'm struggling to think of what the Raiders were doing when they I mean, maybe I'm wrong and you can correct me on Aiden O'Connell, but they didn't get their quarterback in this draft, and they were a team that you would think needs a quarterback. They're going into the season as of right now with Aiden O'Connell, Gardner Minshew, and in their first-round draft pick, they go with a tight end for the second year in a row in the first round. Any explanation as to what the Raiders may be thinking?
Yeah, we know that they were very interested in a potential slingshot way up the board so that Antonio Pierce could be reunited with Jaden Daniels, so we helped bring into Arizona State. That was always unrealistic. We got the reports of what the Patriots were asking for, and it would have been even more from the Raiders, going 2 slots from behind the Vikings. You have to give up even more. So that wasn't realistic. And then the only other guy that we heard that they liked was Penix, but from what I've heard with that is it was if he fell to them, he would have been in consideration. I don't think that there was, any sort of trade-up thing for him. And in lieu of that, the circumstances being what they were with all these guys getting pushed up the board and whatnot, and where you're sitting in the draft equity situation, I actually love what they did. Because they didn't do what their division rival did, 1 pick ahead of them, which is panic and draft Christian Ponder or Kenny Pickett in the first round, which is what Sean Payton decided to do with Mr. Bo Nix. I think that the Raiders helped their passing attack by multiple times more than the Broncos did by picking Bowers 1 slot later than the Broncos did with Nix. People, and I understand that the year before that they took Michael Mayer, but those 2 guys don't play the same position. Michael Mayer is your classic inline guy. Brock Bowers, they shouldn't even call him a tight end. He's just a yard gainer. You could put him in the slot. You can play him outside, play him in the backfield. You can literally put him wherever you want. Just get him the ball, and he's going to advance it. The most impressive thing about Brock Bowers, he goes to Georgia as a true freshman, and he walks into this team that had a receiving room of George Pickens, A.D. Mitchell, Ladd McConkey, Jermaine Burton, Kyrus Jackson, Marcus Rosemy-Jackson, Darnell Washington, another NFL tight end, was in that room. Then you had James Cook, your guys' boy, was the running back. On that team that was about to win a national title, Brock Bowers was the wide receiver 1. He leads that team in receiving, was a first-team All-American. and he did that the next 2 years as well. Leads the team in receiving, first team All-America, won the Mackey 2 of those years. But Kirby Smart said if they had shifted him to running back, that Brock Bowers would have started for them at running back as well. You get sort of the Debo of tight end utility out of him when they handed him the ball. He was devastating in that as well. He averaged over 10 yards per carry when he was at Georgia and converted, I think, a third of those carries into touchdowns. So the Raiders are going to have all sorts of fun with him, and he is going to make Gardner Minshew or O'Connell, whoever's in, appear to be a lot better than he actually is.
Thor, we've talked to you over the years. I'm just so happy that people are catching on to Thor Nystrom. I mean, you went on Cowherd. I mean, where are we going to be here in 5 years from now? NFL Network, Thor? What's next for you, buddy?
I certainly appreciate that, and I just wanted to say you guys were the first guys to have me on regularly anywhere across the nation. This going back like 6-7 years, so that opportunity for me was really special, getting that opportunity. So I really appreciate you guys seeing me early. It's why I love you guys, and it's really cool to get an opportunity now talk to someone like Colin Cowherd or some of these other things, but you guys know who my boys are, so
Thor, we appreciate
that's what
it.
it is.
Real recognizes real, Thor. I mean, you're from the Pomade Plains in Minnesota. I can spot it. I know it. I know what it looks like, and we always appreciate getting caught up with you, man. Great job as always, covering the draft and covering college football. We'll look forward to talking to you again here later on this summer.
Always a pleasure, boys. Talk to you soon.
Thanks, Thor.
There's the great Thor Nystrom. Read his work at Fantasy Pros and Betting Pros.
Fondo should have been fired on this.
It's a good one.
Honestly, they did that take of the year.
Take of the year nominee.
Yeah.
Fire him on the spot. What are you doing?
Well, you realize, like, oh my gosh, he took a running back and then took a tight end. Oh, to develop. The hell are you talking about? Develop?
Yeah.
He's making plays in Indiana. Brought Washington the national champion. Develop.
First round draft pick. First round draft pick that you need to develop. Okay.
Right.
We're going to take a break and come back with some takes. I'll drink to that is on the way.
I have an NBA take.
Oh.
I don't know if you saw this or not. It's just a quote from a legend apologizing.
Never apologize.
Never. Especially if you're a legend. If
Never.
If you do something wrong, yeah, you can apologize.
Yeah, but even when you do something wrong and you apologize, it's not enough.
Well,
it's never enough.
That's fair. But if you're talking about the light world of sports,
sure.
Sports take, and you have a sports take.
And you have to apologize for that sports take?
Who's telling him to apologize?
That's
the take I have here, and why they think this is so fun. And I have a non-sports take today, too.
I love the non-sports takes. I had a friend ask I thought a compelling question on X earlier today, my buddy Jim. And chew on this question. We'll talk about it here in a little bit with I'll Drink to That. Would you in Buffalo rather have the NHL team that you have as is or a competitive NBA team that challenges for titles more often than not? Think about that. And we'll come back and we'll discuss.
There's any question, but go ahead. Yeah.
We'll discuss that and more on the way here with I'll Drink to That. And don't forget, joining us here just after 4 o'clock as well, right around 4:25, we'll talk to Spencer German from our Odyssey Sports sister station, 92.3 The Fan in Cleveland. We'll get the latest from Spencer and everything happening in Cleveland. And there's a lot happening in Cleveland. That's coming up here in about a half an hour or so. Your calls are welcome at 866-4FAN, 585-866-4326.
Sports station. The Fan Rochester Sports Update.
Wait is over. Game 3 tonight. The Rochester Americans in Syracuse. The best of 5 tied at 1 game each. It'll be a tough atmosphere tonight. Jeremy Davies, defenseman, he's ready.
It's fun to be here. Some good memories from here last year, and it's good to be back. I know the barn's going to be rocking, and we enjoy being the villains, coming on the road and trying to steal a win.
Yeah, the coverage begins at 7 o'clock tonight with Don Stevens and Brian Duff here on the Fan Rochester. The Red Wings today gave up 8 runs in the top of the first, 4 runs in the top of the ninth, and they fall to Syracuse 12-6 the final. Same 2 teams tomorrow at Frontier Field. The Yankees lose the final game of their 4-game set in Baltimore 7-2 the final. The Giants winning at Fenway today 3-1 the final. Rangers over the Nationals in the 6-3-0. The Mets and Cubs tied at 5 in the 10th. Gene Battaglia, the Fan Rochester.
The Sports Bar with Danger and Battaglia.
The rookie minicamp dates for the Bills, that's going to be May 10th to the 11th. And really the key guy here is Dalton Kincaid. We almost got to start thinking of Dalton Kincaid as a receiver at this point.
Let's go! Mike Danger.
Hey, welcome to the Sports Bar. Guys, thanks for having me on. It's me, Boston Scott.
Gene Battaglia.
I don't think I've ever seen you dance.
It's not pretty.
Danger, you want to join me?
What a pro wants.
Here's a guy.
Is RIT open?
Breaking news.
Go Tigers!
Amerks Crunch starting at 7 tonight.
Game 3.
The Edmonton Oilers closed out the Kings 4-1 in Game 5, and the Stars took a 3-2 lead on Vegas with a 3-2 home win.
Mavericks leaning on Luka Doncic to take control of the series.
Pete Alonso was out 1-0, baby. Come Magic.
Oh, who cares?
The code word is Yahtzee. And Daddy gets to go home early.
We'll talk. Love you. See you later.
Daddy needs some new shoes.
I miss Horvath and John Ram.
Oh, yeah.
Wow. We appreciate you checking out the Sports Bar with Danger and Mr. Krabby Ass.
95.7 FM and AM 950 The Fan. Rochester.
We go to Cleveland in about 15-20 minutes. Check in with our buddy Spencer German from our Odyssey Sports sister station, 92.3 The Fan in Cleveland. Got some takes to get to here in the Sports Bar.
Yeah, as the NBA is going to be fun. Also, we got the Knicks Sixers tonight here.
Yeah.
Not in the NBA playoffs, the Lakers. Wah, wah. And hey, if you want a Laker take, like Magic Johnson. I know some people make fun of Magic Johnson for pointing out the obvious, but this was his opinion. Quote, the Lakers have no one to blame but themselves. They wouldn't have been in the play-in game or finished as the 7th seed if they hadn't lost too many games because of load management. Danger. Okay, let me stop right there.
Yeah.
That's a decent sports take, right?
He's right.
Yeah.
Yes.
I like that take. You may not like that take, but look, it's old school. I get it. Let's be honest. Why would anyone get upset at that? Apparently someone did. A couple days later, Magic, quote, on X, Lakers Nation, I have to apologize to the Lakers organization. It was the injuries that plagued the Lakers this season, not load management. You're freaking Magic Johnson. You don't need to apologize to LeBron. That's what he's talking about here. Right. LeBron missed 11 games this season because a finger, quote, ankle, or was it load management? And I'm not so sure. Yeah, it was load management. And yes, a couple more wins, and you win more 2 games, you're the 6th seed. You're not dealing with the play-in round. You're not dealing with Denver, okay? And they probably get bounced by Minnesota, but I digress, okay? You better believe it was LeBron's people telling Magic to apologize. Magic, tell him to stick it. Don't worry about being a nice guy. But don't worry. LeBron will pick up and move just like he always does. Runs away from the problem. Go to Philly. Please, go to Philly. Go somewhere, LeBron, where the media and the fan base will not take your BS. I'm done with LeBron.
I'm so proud right now. I feel like for the first time, or one of the first times, maybe I have influenced you a little bit here in the Sports Bar, Gino. You're finally on board the LaFraud train. This guy is a problem. Magic Johnson doesn't need to apologize for speaking the truth. And LeBron is sensitive. And KD and some of these guys, they're just soft. They're sensitive. You can't question them. You just have to appreciate them.
Did it come from LeBron or was it Jeannie Buss? Hey, we really need LeBron not to opt out. Magic, can you do me a favor?
No, no. I don't. That sounds like there would be somebody like LeBron behind that, like load management, or maybe even if you want to go even deeper down the rabbit hole, maybe it was somebody in the NBA front office saying, hey, man, we're trying to get away from this phrase called load management. We don't really want anybody ever using it ever because we know the negative connotation that comes with load management, and also now with the partnerships we've acquired with all of these casinos, we probably, shouldn't be talking about load management.
Your Magic Johnson, and you say, all right, not apologizing. What are you going to do?
Right, I am Magic Johnson, by the way.
You're Magic Johnson.
I that's my take is don't apologize. I mean, you could say something. He didn't say anything bad there, but even if you say something bad and you're repentant and you want to apologize for it, it's never enough.
Or maybe you just say, upon further review, maybe it was an ankle. But that's what he's referring to, folks. Like, there was always this debate, like, is LeBron really hurt with the ankle, or is he really, hey, he's 39 and he needs a few extra days off?
Maybe we're making too big a deal out of this. I mean, we're forgetting that this was not a failure for the Lakers. They won the in-season tournament. They have that banner hanging in the rafters. So
the mayor said so
herself.
herself.
Yeah, they're fine.
Yeah.
And LeBron is obviously he can hang that one on. That's on LeBron. He made that happen. I don't think there was load management involved in them winning that title. I might be wrong. I can't remember. But, they have that to fall back on. So at least the season wasn't an entire failure. Did you see Lindy Ruff's letter to the Sabres fans today?
Can I confess I didn't read it?
You saw it, though.
I saw it.
You saw it, and you didn't read it because you know what it's going to say.
Yeah, like, hey, I'm going to work hard. I'm so happy, blah, blah, blah. Was that basically
it's just jet fuel for your hope and your optimism as a fan. So while we've got a long ways to go here to before we even learn if the Lindy hire is a success, my buddy Jim threw up a poll on X. I mentioned this before we went to break. In Buffalo, would you rather have the NHL team that you have as is, or would you rather have a competitive NBA team that challenges for titles more often than not?
Okay, and it's a flawed poll. Like, would you rather have an NBA team that's losers, or would you have an NHL team that would compete more often than not? I mean, that's a leading poll there. I see where you're going, and
I love it. And the reason why I love it is I think it tests. We always fashion Buffalo as a hockey town. It's a hockey town, and you watch. The ratings will come out for the NHL, and inevitably Buffalo is always one of the highest rated TV markets for NHL, right? For NHL viewership. I looked at the results of this poll, and it's ongoing right now. And it was close. It wasn't like a runaway in one direction or the other. The NHL team has a slight edge. The basketball, I know Buffalo used to be a basketball town.
So I know you don't like the history lessons, but this is fascinating, Danger.
Yeah.
I'm going to tell you, and I'll tell people things that they probably never heard about, okay? So they had the Buffalo Braves, right?
Yes.
Okay. So you know the Buffalo Braves, but we had a team in Rochester, but you don't know.
I don't know. We didn't have a team in Rochester. So that's fake news.
So the Buffalo Braves existed, okay? Here's the crazy thing, because the Sabres had the premier dates, okay? They get to choose first. Who had the second dates there at the Odd?
The Braves?
Canisius Basketball.
Who?
Canisius Basketball, for whatever reason.
Right. The NBA, we forget. The NBA wasn't anything until you got to the late 70s.
So some crazy things about that. Canisius Basketball missing the boat on the Big East. Like, you want to talk about a what if. Like, the dopes who were running the school back then couldn't realize, hey, this is going to worth a lot of money. Nope. So now they're enjoying MAC basketball. But I digress. You couldn't get any dates there. You had the Sabres taking their dates, and then you had Canisius Basketball, and the owners left with Tuesday night here, Sunday afternoon there. Like, it didn't work. You could never get the primo dates. So they picked up and moved to San Diego. So it wasn't because people in Buffalo didn't support the town.
What year did that happen?
1978.
Oh, see, then I know that happened. I was alive when that happened. I remember it.
I have to, Cliff Notes here. Danger has his tongue in his cheek. Okay, he understands. Okay, some of the history in Rochester. He's just
it just didn't happen when I wasn't here. I don't know.
Trying to get me upset.
You tell me that there was Rochester had a football team, Rochester had a basketball team.
My point is, there's always been this fan base and this hunger for I'd even say in Rochester, like, for crying out loud, per capita, how many kids do we have in the NBA today compared to Everly? Yeah, so Would we ever get a team? No, absolutely not. That's long gone.
Well, I thought that because it was closer, because I do think that it is more of a hockey town. I think it just underscores our desire to cheer for a champion, and it makes me wonder what our threshold for pain is. I mean, we've gone 13 years. Is it 17 years with the Sabres? How long can we go watching the Sabres underachieve? Seeing how close this poll is and how there is a desire for a good NBA team, over the hockey team that underachieves, I thought was interesting.
Well, I think it's a biased poll saying, would you rather have a winning basketball team over what we've had before? And we love it. What if you had a losing NBA team? How many cities have lost when was the last time Portland have ever amounted to anything? I mean, there's a lot of NBA cities that have gone through dry spells comparable to what we've had here in Buffalo for hockey. No doubt about it. If I may, Danger, a non-sports take today.
Love it.
Comic-Cons are popular now. I get it. And every town has one. We have one here in Rochester coming up in September. But I can hear you. That's not for me.
Who says that?
Some people don't want to go and get
Comic-Con?
dressed. Yeah, Comic-Con. Okay. Yeah, well, look, if it's not for you, I have something that is for you now, especially if you're like the executive producer who was so excited this morning to tell me about this one. Move over, Comic-Con. We now have CrimeCon. John Walsh, Nancy Grace, defensive attorney Mark Garagos, the Catch a Predator guy, Chris Hansen. We even have the local connection here. Gary Craig will be speaking at CrimeCon. There you go, Gary. You don't need Gannett. I digress. See, that's the way you do it to our Gannett brethren. Go out and make money, all right?
Yeah.
CrimeCon in Nashville at the end of the month. And no, I am not going. But should I be scared? The executive producer is actually excited about something
Gino,
like that.
you should go. You should surprise the executive producer with a trip to CrimeCon.
To Nashville?
Yes, go. You should go. You should absolutely go. I'm guessing it's on a weekend. And
it's the weekend after Memorial Day.
Okay.
Yes.
Yeah, that would be a lot of fun. It'd be a nice little getaway for you and the executive producer, something that she wants to do. You can meet up with Gary. You know, we like Gary. We know Gary listens to the show. Yeah, meet up with Gary for a cold one while you're down there. And take in all of the different panels. I mean,
who would be the people that would go to something like this? Like, ooh, tell me about this murder.
I'll tell you, Garagos is compelling. Like, anytime I hear Garagos speak, or if you ever listen to any of his podcasts or anything like that, I think Garagos is a character. Nancy Grace isn't my cup of tea, but I get it. John Walsh, yes, I would love to hear John Walsh stories. And
Hansen
is the headliner. Like, I mean, just
have a seat.
Yes. Would you like a cookie? I mean, like that sounds. If the executive producer's into it, Gino, don't tell her. Just do it. Just book it.
Just do it. Yeah. Just book it.
Just book it. Just get your tickets. Ask Gary it. Like, Gary, what's the in? Is there an in? Is there a discount price? Can I get a media credential for me and the executive producer?
Maybe I can be a plant for Gary. Like, if they had plants at the NFL draft, as you were saying, like, I could be a plant there. And
guarantee you
yeah.
that the fans that they show on TV at the NFL draft aren't real fans. They might not even be real people. They might just be people that they've manufactured in a lab somewhere to show up and overreact to a third-round pick that they've never heard of before for their team. Oh, I love that guy. Yeah. Yeah. Woo! Like, oh, the camera's on me? Okay, react now.
Like, they act like you're at an Amherst game whenever they pan away, and then the 12-year-old, yeah, jumping up and down. That's the NFL draft, basically, for a grown-up.
That's right. That's right. Spencer German has some 585 roots. We remember Spencer from his time in Rochester, doing great work now at our Odyssey Sports sister station, 92.3 The Fan in Cleveland. And there's a lot happening in Cleveland right now. You've got the Cavaliers.
Oh, you're already thinking ahead there,
Sorry.
buddy.
The Cavaliers tomorrow night looking to close out Orlando in Orlando. You've got the Guardians in first place, the AL Central, and you have what potentially could be a new stadium already for Cleveland.
Well, explain this. It's like what they did was Cleveland's a little different there. Like, hey, would you rather have this? Would you rather pay for this, or would you rather pay for that? And it's good that we're having Spencer on, because to me, on the outside, both these seem unrealistic. And actually, I think we've kind of hit a tipping point here in America where it's like, yeah, we're not paying for your damn stadium, but maybe they will.
I think that there is. I think I agree with you on that. But we'll get into it with Spencer a little bit here and get get his takeaway from how the public is viewing that potential there in Cleveland. Spencer German, 92.3 The Fan in Cleveland, stopping by the sports bar next. Join us at 866-4326.
You're listening to the Sports Bar with Danger and Battaglia. 95.7 FM and AM 950. The Fan, Rochester.
Odyssey has sports for every fan. Keep up with your favorite teams from across the country and get the inside scoop from experts. AUDACY. Odyssey.
Luke, I have something to tell you, but it's going to have to...
Fan Rochester Sports Update.
Game 3 tonight for the Rochester Americans in Syracuse. Tied at 1 game each. Head coach Seth Appert is going to have his team ready on the road.
You really need to attack each game like it's his own game. But our guys, we've been good on the road all year. We've been good with our backs to the wall all year. We've been good in this building most of the year. So there's some confidence that you can draw from that, sure.
Don Stevens, Brian Duff will have your call tonight beginning at 7 here on the Fan Rochester. The Wings today gave up 8 runs in the top of the first, 4 runs in the top of the ninth. They fall to Syracuse 12-6 the final. Same 2 teams tomorrow at Innovative Field. On the Major League scoreboard, the Yankees lose the final game of their series in Baltimore 7-2. Red Sox also falling today at home to the Giants 3-1. Bottom of the 11th, the Mets trying to tie things up. The Cubs have gone ahead 6-5, and as I speak, the Mets have tied it up, Danger. Gene Battaglia, the Fan Rochester.
Top Shelf Sports Talk. You're hanging out in the sports bar with Danger and Battaglia on the Sports Leader, 95.7 FM and AM 950, The Fan, Rochester.
Correction, they won, Danger. Hit the music.
Will you focus?
Hit the music.
No, damn it. Focus on. You have a job to do, okay? We serve the public here at the Fan Rochester.
I'm providing an update.
Absolutely.
The Cubs lost.
Distracted.
The Cubs lost while I'm doing the update. I see the tying run, and then I see the winning run come across.
An unprofessional display by my co-host here, Gene Battaglia. I almost feel like we shouldn't go to our next guest because it's embarrassing. It's really embarrassing.
Just hit the music.
Yeah, it's embarrassing, and I'm not hitting the music. I will not hit the music. We're Spencer German joining us here in the sports bar from Cleveland, our Odyssey Sports sister station, 92.3, The Fan in Cleveland. I'm sorry, Spencer. I'm apologizing in advance for my co-host's just outward display of unprofessionalism as we're here to have a serious sports conversation with your Cavaliers tomorrow night, looking to advance in the NBA postseason, take on the Celtics here in the semifinals of the Eastern Conference. Spencer, how are you, buddy? How you been? And how about those Cavs?
First off, Gene, as somebody who's had to do updates for several years myself, I know how it goes, man. Sometimes you just mess up. It's all good. I'm certainly not going to hold it against you. But no, yeah, it's been good, man. Just a lot going on, obviously in Cleveland with the Guardians, obviously off to a hot start, and the Cavs in the playoffs. And I think we're all kind of tensely waiting to see what happens in Game 6, given how those first 2 games went. And then obviously just with the draft last weekend, there's a lot to talk about with the Browns as well. So it's a busy, busy time of year. But how about you guys?
Yeah, Spencer, we wanted to have you on today because certainly we want to get your thoughts on the Cavs and how far they could go. And the Guardians are interesting. I'll give you that. And the Browns on the field are, they're interesting too. But what we're kind of going to start here with, wait a second, there's a couple plans here for the Browns Stadium. Get us up to speed here for the Browns. What kind of timeline and what kind of public support is going on here? And could we actually have a dome built in Cleveland?
Yeah, so what's interesting is I think, with the situation in Buffalo kind of set maybe an image or an idea of like what things could be like in Cleveland. And we all kind of sat back and watched how that played out to then sort of, I guess, form our opinions and our thoughts on how it should happen in Cleveland. Basically, what we know at this point is that it's down to 2 options for the team. And one of them is using the current stadium as the footprint downtown on the lakefront, and they would pump I think $1.5 billion or so into it to renovate it, get it up to standards and all these different things. It would not include putting a dome over top of it, would still be open air, and just trying to kind of go about it that way, and that would keep the stadium downtown. The other option, which is this week, there were some images that surfaced of a rendering of what it could look like. Those are kind of making the rounds on social media. That would be to put the stadium in an area just west of the city called Brook Park, which is like just on the other side of the city limits and right near the Cleveland Hopkins Airport. And that, based on what the renderings were showing, would include building a domed stadium. So it's kind of down to those 2 things, and that would cost more than the renovations to the current stadium. It'd be like over $2 billion. But that is kind of the thought process, and I think it's. I mean, you guys know from the conversation with the Bills and the stadium situation, like it's kind of difficult to get anybody to be on the same page with what the stadium should be. There's a lot of old school folks who are like, well, I want my stadium or my football games to be played in the open air and in the weather and the elements and all these different things. It's the same thing here in Cleveland. But then I think a lot of people have come around to the idea that a dome would be a good thing for the community. Maybe you get a chance to host a Super Bowl at some point. You can get a men's Final Four. So I think more and more people are kind of coming around to that idea, and now it's just about like what it's going to look like, and obviously the PSL conversation that you guys are also having right now too.
Spencer, I think you're right. I think that what the Bills did and what Terry Pagula did with the state of New York and extracting a record amount of state funds to help build the new Bills Stadium is something that made every other NFL team and everybody else around the NFL kind of look and say, see what you're capable of doing if you really do it the right way. And my question is, what is the fan feedback on this? What is the public outcry on this? Does the public feel like, yeah, we're okay with some of our state funds and our taxes going to building this billionaire's palace that will potentially hold all of these major events in the near future?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's at the center of the problem with where, like, with the options right now is, you know, people don't necessarily feel like the city funding downtown should be going to a stadium because there's just so many other issues in a downtown area like Cleveland to address with that money and the public funding and the tax money that are, again, a higher priority than fixing up a stadium that in 10 years you'll be talking about having to renovate again. So I do think that's kind of at the heart of a lot of these conversations. And the difference is between, again, the Bills situation and the Browns. Like, you guys in Western New York are all used to the stadium being south of the city in Orchard Park. This fan base has grown up with that stadium being downtown, you know, in sort of the hubbub of everything, the restaurants, the bars. Now, the stadium itself is kind of separate from all that, but being able to go downtown and then and you know, hang out on the lots and then walk over to the stadium and be in downtown and kind of feel the vibes of that, that's something I think fans are having a hard time letting go of. I think my general consensus feels like people are coming around to the idea of a dome more than they were in the beginning. And some of that is just like kind of talking it out more and, again, the financial implications of what it means for the area. But I still think there's people holding out hope that, man, I really don't want to see the Browns leave downtown Cleveland because I just love the game day experience, being able to go downtown and go to games. So it's an interesting dilemma. It's an interesting conversation, as all these stadium conversations are. And the funding is, again, at the center of that, like all these stadium conversations usually are.
Yeah, see, I think the standpoint of we need something new, and I'm just going to pick on Cleveland here for a second. That was 1999. It's not that long ago. I mean, is the stadium in really that? I understand you need repairs and some other things, or is this really about, hey, when we built this in 1999, it didn't really have the suites and all the money-making amenities that you need in the NFL. What are your honest thoughts on the stadium and the state of it today here in Cleveland, Spencer?
Yeah, it's a good question because I do think from afar, people probably look and they're like, well, why does Cleveland need a new stadium? It's only 25 years old. But from everything I understand about when they built that facility, it was obviously when the Browns, they had been moved by Art Modell, it became the Ravens. They came back in 99, and from everything I understand, they rushed the process of kind of building it. So they were just basically trying to be like, let's get the structure up, pass all the things we need to pass, and have a stadium for this team. So it does need serious upgrades. I also think with it being on the lakefront, that provides a lot more wear and tear to the stadium than I think other facilities around the NFL, just because of the winter conditions and the water and all these different things that kind of come up there and impact it, and the wind. So I think like it's almost like a sunken cost from the beginning, where you're putting money into it knowing, again, in another decade you're going to have to put more money into it. So I think that's probably, from the outside perspective, I get why it looks like, well, it's not that old. But I do think here in Cleveland, everyone kind of understands that it's not the ideal place for the stadium to be long term. Now, if they did go that route, there's been talk in this city forever about trying to sort of build up the lakefront around the stadium and add, like, you know, condos and hotels and all kinds of different stuff, restaurants, bars, to make it kind of its own little community. And I do think there would be an effort to do that if that was the decision they make. But my read on the situation, everything that's been reported, it feels like we're trending more so towards the dome route that's going to be south of the city.
Spencer, when when it became clear that the Bills were getting a new stadium, I remember conversations we were having as there were discussions about whether or not they could or should build a new stadium. My fear was always that Western New York didn't really have the kind of wealth to support what the Bills were going to ask their fans to do, meaning the PSL conversation, right?
Yeah.
I'm curious about how that plays out in a market like Cleveland, a blue-collar market much like Buffalo. Do you think there's enough appetite for the Browns, and do you think there's enough wealth in the region there to support what they're about to ask or what they will end up asking if you do get a new stadium in terms of the PSLs? Because these owners, man, I mean, the Pagulas have done something that I think every NFL owner wishes they could do or wants to do, which is not just get the state funding, but also get the money from the PSLs, sell a portion of the team. I mean, when it's all said and done, Terry Pagula will have paid zero for a brand new multi-billion-dollar stadium.
Yeah, and this is why, being somewhat close to that situation, being from Western New York, and following along with all the stories and the writing on how fans are reacting to all this, this is, again, the parallels are kind of crazy between Cleveland and Buffalo. It makes sense, two Rust Belt cities and all that. So I think it's very comparable in terms of the community and the blue-collar, vibes of both cities, and that people just frankly aren't going to be able to afford those types of things. What's interesting about Cleveland specifically, when this new stadium, or when the current stadium was built, they actually had they were one of the first out in front of doing PSLs at the time. But when the Haslams bought the team in the early 2010s, they got rid of them because the team was so bad, and I think they were sort of struggling to sell the PSLs, and they were like, all right, we don't want to do this. We're going to go a different route and just make it standard ticket prices. So that's kind of an interesting wrinkle here, is that the current ownership had that at their disposal and got rid of it. And so I'm curious to see if that now comes back around full circle where they're using it. I'm going to guess that it will, because I think all these new stadiums nowadays, they're going to have some sort of PSL financial plan in terms of how fans get tickets. But similarly to what you guys are seeing with the reaction from Bills fans, I think that's going to be a huge sticking point for fans here. As well, where people are just really upset with how much they have to pay, and I can't get season tickets the same way I used to, or I can't afford them like I used to for my family of four like we used to do. I think it's going to be a really, really controversial, as much as downtown or not downtown is a controversial topic right now. I think the PSL topic is going to be even more controversial for the city for all the same reasons that you guys are seeing. So it's kind of a wait and see thing. The one thing they've been very mum on with the stadium situation is how it's all going to get funded and what the ticket structure will look like. And I think they do that for a reason, because they want to put it off as long as possible. So at some point we'll have to reconnect and we can sort of rehash all this down the line. But yeah, I'm fascinated as much as anybody to find out if they're going to go a similar route as what the Bills did.
Yeah, Spencer Brown played for the Bills. Spencer German, Rochester native Spencer German, 92.3 The Fan in Cleveland, our guest here in the Sports Bar. Spencer, as far as on the field, and I got to say this, I thought the season last year for the Browns, I would call it personally weird, where, hey, you made the playoffs, but you get blasted by Houston, and we're not sure about Watson, but you had this great story with Joe Flacco, but now he's gone. So kind of moving, and you had also now the second time Stefanski winning Coach of the Year. Moving forward, I guess it all comes down to Watson, right? What is the expectation for Deshaun Watson, who clearly has not lived up to that price tag so far?
Yeah, you hit the nail on the head. That's the same conversation we're all having. Is last year, I think there was a lot of pressure on the organization as a whole to make the playoffs, because if they didn't, we could have been talking about a coaching change and maybe a GM change, and how do you different pieces on the roster. Would Myles Garrett maybe try to force his way out because he's in the prime of his career and he's not making playoff appearances? So I think they staved off that conversation now after the year they had in 2023 to make the playoffs. But the person who has all the pressure on him now going into 2024 really is Deshaun Watson. And I think it's less about, I think our fan base out here has cared less about, there's people who still care that he's making $230 million guaranteed. But that's not so much the conversation as much as it's just well, you gave up 3 first-round picks for him. You gave up all this draft capital, and the organization's gotten nothing out of it at this point. And it was, over the weekend, there was a lot of stories written just about the what all those picks turned into basically for Houston and the players that they drafted with them. And it's easy to sit here right now and say, yeah, I mean, Houston's won this trade in a landslide with all the assets that they acquired, whether it was via trading those picks or using those picks to build the team that they now have. And you just lost to them in the playoffs last year, and you're sitting here still waiting for the return on your investment. So, yeah, this 2024 is solely about Deshaun Watson. He's going to have to play at a high level. I will say I was more worried about the shoulder injury that he's coming back from, because there isn't, if you try to look up like glenoid fracture, NFL players' names, or just in general, you don't find anything. This is usually something that like a pitcher in baseball suffers from. And I was more worried about like how he was going to return, if he was going to be effective, because especially when it's in his throwing shoulder. But based on some of the conversations, like Deshaun spoke a couple weeks ago, and just some of the people that are within the organization talked about it, I feel a little bit better about that, knowing that pitchers have had this injury and they come back and they're fine, and it's the same surgeon who's worked on a lot of those guys. But at the same time, like that's still a factor here. Like, can he be effective after this injury, and can he kind of get out of his headspace and out of his own way in terms of trying to like win everybody back at once and just play football and do it at a high level so that he's, successful? Because if he's not, this time next year, leading up to the NFL draft next year, we could be talking about the Browns starting to find like an exit strategy for what lies ahead at that position.
Spencer, low-key, the Cavs Magic series has been fun. It's been a grinder. It's been competitive. The Magic are pesky. The Cavs are on the brink of advancing. Talk to us a little bit about the Cavs, how they've done this postseason on this run so far with the Magic, whether or not you think that they advance tomorrow night, and what's ahead for them here as they try to make a trip to the finals here for the first time since LeBron.
Yeah, so it's been an up and down season for them, just with all the injuries that they've dealt with and things. And this season, similarly to how last year with the Browns, like we were talking about, was about, Kevin Stefanski's future. There's a lot riding on this series in this playoff run for Cavs coach JB Bickerstaff, because plenty of people just kind of feel like he's maybe the guy that got them through the rebuild, but he's not necessarily the guy to take him to that next level. So I think they're still kind of waiting for that to come to fruition. I think the Orlando series has kind of gone under the radar in terms of when it's been on and the networks it's been on. But you're right, like those first four games all kind of turned into blowouts, but they were competitive blowouts, if that makes any sense. And then the game 5 the other night was a really good game, competitive down to the wire, and the Cavs were able to kind of pull it out. And yeah, I think like the fan base is kind of in a holding pattern of getting too excited about this team and how far they can go. But obviously, advancing out of the first round would be progress from last year, where they were gentlemen swept by the Knicks. So I'm a little bit hesitant to say they close it out on Friday, just with how these games have gone. There's that old saying, I actually hate it, the saying about a series doesn't start until a team wins on the road. If that's true, then this series technically hasn't started, because all the home teams won every single game. Yeah. So because of that factor, I'm a little bit hesitant to say that they close it out on Friday. I'm hopeful they do. But yeah, I think just with Orlando and the way they played at home the first two games they had at home, I think that there's certainly some mojo there for them. And I also, it's an interesting thing to watch with Jarrett Allen, the Cavs starting center, because he's dealing with a rib injury and missed Game 5. He's expected to at least try to play tomorrow, so we'll see. But if he's not out there, then yeah, I think we might be coming back for a Game 7.
One game in the major leagues tonight in baseball, and that's the Guardians down in Houston. Houston's been a disaster so far, 10-20 their record. The Guardians the opposite, 20-10, including 12-6 on the road. So fun story. Even though Minnesota's won 10 in a row, Cleveland's still in first place in the division. So Spencer, is this real, what you're seeing out of the Guardians so far?
I think it's real. I think what's maybe the most exciting and maybe even surprising thing about this team is just that it's been the offense that's kind of carried them. I think as last I had checked, I know they were still like top 10 in a whole bunch of offensive categories, runs scored, among other things. And so I think that's an encouraging sign, because that's the thing that everybody was most worried about with this team after the way last year played out, and they couldn't hit home runs. They couldn't push runs across the plate. So that's obviously very exciting. The big question for them is going to be like, how long can their rotation sort of stand strong enough to get them wins and get them through the season? Because Shane Bieber goes to the injured list with the Tommy John surgery. Tristan McKenzie has admitted that he has a tear in his UCL and he's just kind of trying to pitch through it. And then Gavin Williams is one of their young phenoms. He's been dealing with some elbow issues since spring training. So it's kind of like a piecemeal group right now. And I think at some point they might have to make a move to add another arm to the rotation. So that's going to be the interesting thing to follow, and that could really make or break the season. But I think the offense playing as well as it has is encouraging, and Guardians fans are certainly excited about that.
Spencer, it's always great getting caught up with you, man, making the 585 proud. What do they got you doing now there at 92.3 The Fan in Cleveland? How can we get more of your work?
Yeah, so still hosting whenever available. I usually do during the NFL offseason a Sunday show, 10 to 2. So you can find me talking Cleveland sports then on Sundays at 92 The Fan. And then, just doing some other stuff where I can with them whenever I get a chance. So, but I always appreciate you guys having me on. It's always a pleasure to be on back in Rochester in my hometown.
Yeah, Joe Venero says hello. I think he claims you from his tree there, Joe.
I'll let him claim me. That was my first out of college job, so I'll let him claim me. That's perfect.
Awesome, Spencer. Appreciate the time, man. Be good. Talk again soon.
Yep, take it easy, guys.
Thanks, Spencer German, our Odyssey Sports sister station, 92.3 The Fan in Cleveland, sharing some insight there on not just the Cleveland Stadium situation, but the Browns, the Guardians, and the Cavs.
It seems like the Bills got in under the wire here because the blowback in Chicago is, wow, that is greater. Maybe it's because the White Sox are doing the same thing at the time, and that has an even ickier feel. But now you have Kansas City coming off of not one but 2 Super Bowl championships, and the voters there are like, okay, yeah, do you want to vote on the – and by the way, the Royals will get this new beautiful downtown stadium. Like,
nah.
No. Oh, but we might go to Kansas. So,
yeah.
And now here's Cleveland, and like, okay, that's nice.
Yeah, common sense tells you that the billionaire should be buying the billionaire's palace. The billionaire should be the one paying for the stadium. The story of how Pagula built this stadium is a fascinating one. It's going to be held in high regard by other billionaires. Wait a minute, you did what? You built a multi-billion-dollar stadium and you didn't spend any of your money on it?
Well, even so, when you have other places that have done this, in Minnesota, say you had the threat they would go to San Antonio, or always Los Angeles was the team. Seattle's going to move to Los Angeles. We never had that, other than one erroneous report that Austin, Texas was interested in the Bills. We never had that part of the story, the leverage part that, hey, the Bills are going to go to Toronto or they're going to go somewhere else. Nope, we just kind of said, yep, here we go. Here's all the money.
Well, while we're talking about stadiums and the stadium being built in Buffalo and other markets and towns like Cleveland, look at what we've done and kind of wonder, can we do the same thing, or will the public allow us to do the same thing? There is some deeper storylines within the Pagula empire right now that one of our favorites, Tim Graham from The Athletic, has been reporting on and sharing with us. And look, it's their family, it's their business. They're going to run it how they want to run it.
But they own a business that is a public trust, if that makes sense. I think we, as taxpayers, have a right to say, hey, what's that all about? What's going on here with this here?
We can dive into this a little bit more here next during Happy Hour. There's been some legal wrangling going on behind the scenes, and none of this is being made public. There's no announcement from the Bills or from the Pagulas. Hell, we haven't heard from Terry on almost 4 years now. It's been almost 4 years.
He spoke at the Sabre press conference, but didn't take questions.
Right. He won't take questions.
No, won't take questions.
And that's a streak that's almost 4 years long. 4 years long now. So I mean, the guy's just not going to share anything. He's not going to put himself in a position where he's going to be asked to share anything, but there's been some reporting done here that leads you to believe that there might be a shift in planning as far as what the future looks like for the ownership of the Buffalo Bills and the Buffalo Sabres. And there are little tells all around that if you kind of connect the dots, you kind of can paint a picture of what might be happening behind the scenes. When you go into business with family, it's always tricky, right? Going into business with family is tricky when there's a lot of money involved. And then on top of it, when you're talking about siblings from one marriage versus siblings from another marriage. It can get a little complicated.
Terry Pagula fired his son-in-law. That's what I learned from reading the Tim Graham article.
Fired his son-in-law. Somebody that he had high praise for.
Right.
Not too long ago, if I'm not mistaken.
Right.
Somebody who was on a fast track within the organization. Well, things have changed, and we'll kind of dive into and explain what it might all mean here for the future of the ownership of the Bills and the Sabres. A round of shots coming up, and you can join us here in the Sports Bar by calling 585-866-4FAN. Our number again, 866-4326. Happy hour next.
HD2 and W239BF Rochester. The sports leader. 95.7 FM and AM 950. The Fan, Rochester. An Odyssey sports station. The Fan, Rochester. Sports update.
Big game 3 for the Amerks tonight. It's only a best of 5. The Amerks and Syracuse tied at a game each. Defenseman Jeremy Davies, the Amerks, comfortable being on the road.
It's fun to be here. Some good memories from here last year, and it's good to be back. I know the barn's going to be rocking, and we enjoy being the villains, coming on the road and trying to steal a win.
Don Stevens and Brian Duff have your call tonight, 7 o'clock here on the Fan Rochester. Not a good day for the Wings. Again, 8 runs in the top of the first, 4 runs in the top of the ninth, 12-6. The loss to Syracuse, same 2 teams tomorrow at Innovative Field. The Yankees today falling to the Orioles 7-2 the final. The Red Sox also losing 3-1 to the Giants. Rangers up on the Nationals 6-0. What's the score, Mike Danger? You want to read the Mets-Cubs score? Mets over the Cubs 7-6. Keep it tight, the Fan Rochester.
The Sports Bar with Danger and Battaglia.
The rookie minicamp dates for the Bills, that's going to be May 10th to the 11th.
And really, the key guy here is Dalton Kincaid. We almost got to start thinking of Dalton Kincaid as a receiver at this point.
Let's go! Mike Danger.
Hey, welcome to the Sports Bar. Guys, thanks for having me on. It's me, Boston Scott.
Gene Battaglia.
I don't think I've ever seen you dance.
It's not pretty.
Danger, you want to join me?
What a pro wants.
Here's a guy. Is RIT open?
Breaking news.
Ow! Go Tigers!
Amerks Crunch, starting at 7 tonight.
Game 3.
The Edmonton Oilers closed out the Kings 4-1 in Game 5, and the Stars took a 3-2 lead on Vegas with a 3-2 home win.
Mavericks leaning on Luka Doncic to take control of the series.
Pete Alonso was out. 1-0, baby. Come Magic.
Oh, who cares?
The code word is Yahtzee. And Daddy gets to go home early.
We'll talk. Love you. See you later.
Daddy needs some new shoes.
I miss Horvath and John Ram.
Oh, yeah.
Wow. We appreciate you checking out the Sports Bar with Danger and Mr. Krabby Ass.
95.7 FM and AM 950 The Fan, Rochester.
See, the thing is, the sports update is your thing. I don't know why you would pull me into your sports update to read a score. That's
just wanted you to.
It's your thing.
Like, hey, that's a tough one for your team where you get the run at the top of the 11th, and then
look, everybody, the regulars are they see what's going on. I mean, those who listen closely to the Sports Bar know what's happening here, Chris, in South Central Kentucky. So Gene Battaglia sees the Mets win over Danger's Cubs, and what does he do? After saying for the last 2 months that he's going to be even keeled, what does he do? Come on, Gino. Do it for the ratings. Rantings for the ratings.
It's not a rant. I just was pointing out that the Mets beat the Cubs, and I wanted just Mike Danger to join in on reading the update.
You wanted me to read the score.
What's wrong
Our
with that?
team split a 4-game series, and you're gloating about it. You're excited that they got a split.
Hold on. The Mets got robbed last night. That was an awful, awful, awful call.
Whoa.
That should have been a tie game.
What am I going to say?
Don't blame officiating.
Thank you.
Officiating is loser lane.
Yep.
Are you kidding me? Look at the replay.
You're telling me everything I need, Gino.
He's safe.
This is disappointing. It's downright embarrassing at this point.
Not.
You and I are just not on the same page.
That was a terrible call last night. Terrible.
So it was the ump's fault.
It was a reason. The main reason why the Mets
the
lost.
main reason.
Yeah.
Okay. You guys protesting that one? Is that one under protest? Is that going to amount to anything? Is that going to amount to anything? Yeah. We're blaming the umps. You see what's going on here? You see?
No, there's no misfit at anything. We were on the air when the Mets had this exciting win.
We've both been very distracted today. It's
like I don't know how they do it on BetMGM today because that's all they do on the show. They bet and then they watch the games they bet on.
Yeah.
I don't know how you keep your train of thought. I guess you're trained over time to have thoughts and kind of. I'm distracted when the Mets have runners on base, losing my train of thought.
One of our regulars, Pete, on X at the Fan Rochester, put up the poll. If the NFL draft came to Buffalo, how would Gene Battaglia be involved? He'd be in the front row. He'd stop by for a day. He'd stay in Rochester. I know how you voted.
Yeah, stay in Rochester.
The answer is C.
Yeah, the answer is C.
Mr. Krabby Ass will stay in Rochester while we all go have fun at the NFL draft in Buffalo.
I'm not Mr. Krabby Ass. I'm actually a lot of fun to be around.
You are Mr. Krabby Ass.
I am not. I can have a good time.
It's been documented by Ryan Horvath of Ben MGM tonight. He wants to go to an NFL draft. Oh, he doesn't? Well, he's just Mr. Krabby Ass over there. Thanks, Pete. Appreciate you guys listening. You can join us at 866-4FAN, 585-866-4326. You know, we had Spencer German from 92.3 The Fan in Cleveland on with us last hour, partially to talk about what's going on in Cleveland with their stadium situation with the Browns. And what's fascinating here in the last couple of months is to see kind of like this land grab that's happening with billionaire owners trying to build new stadiums. You're seeing it in Cleveland. You're seeing it in Chicago. You've got the renovations in Jacksonville that are happening.
Oh, we forget about that one. And then, hey, Kansas City, we want you to build us a new Yeah, no, I think Chiefs and Royals, we're good on that. Try again.
When you see what Terry Pegula has done and how this stadium is being built, really with none of his money, none of his wealth going into this stadium, it's a remarkable template that they're setting for the rest of the league and other owners of professional sports to kind of look at and be like, well, yeah, that's the way it's got to be done. That's the way we should try and do it. How do we do it? The Pegula empire has taken a bit of a turn here in the last few months, and certainly the last few years, I should say. And certainly the biggest factor in that is the health of Kim Pegula.
Yeah, I think maybe the first sign for us was, okay, last week, Lindy Ruff, head coach, introduced. And there's Terry Pegula. He gives his statement. And up there is Pete Gawelli, who known for a long time coming back home. He's the new CEO of both franchises. Makes sense he's up there. Who's that woman? I know. Laura Pegula. Wait a second. Like the first marriage. You're kidding me. Like she hadn't been. Well, credit our friend. Credit where credit's due. Tim Graham, the Athletic, has been on top of all this. He was the first to actually report, but until the Bills actually had to admit it. Yeah, portion of the franchise is actually up for sale, the Buffalo Bills. Yeah, if you want to buy the Nighthawks, sure, you can have them. But this last bit of info, and I guess we start, like you mentioned, with Kim Pegula. And the story was, it's a couple summers ago, and you hear about this terrible medical condition. We don't get much info to the point where it becomes this mystery. What happened with Kim? And you get this one report that says she's down in Boca Raton and then she's not available. You're just hoping, okay, I hope she's going to be okay. I hope she's going to be okay.
You have the Bills requesting privacy in the matter. They're not asking anybody to report on it. They don't want to field any questions. They want to be left alone on this matter.
Yeah, and because of that, if you cover the team, that's a fine line. Like somebody requests privacy, well then do you really want to kind of blow this up? And I thought, all right, it'll be a TMZ. It'll be some sort of outsider. It'll be somebody like that. And
it really wasn't.
No. And I think that's a credit to like kind of our community. Like, hey, we want to know, but do we really want to know?
And also at the time that she fell ill, it was a true 50-50 between Terry and Kim.
100%. Like she, in fact, you could say 50-50, but when it comes to being the face of the both franchises, she was out there. She was the one with the quote. She was one on the committees. She was the one who saw how many times at Fisher in the hospitality tent saying hello to people.
We don't have a check laying around. We don't have $1.4 billion just laying around to write a check for, right?
Yeah. So when she had her issues, it's like, all right, well, you're hoping it's going to be a long recovery. And, well, now this brings us to this report that, step number one, going before a court, Kim Pegula is now incapacitated. Meaning she can't make any of her own decisions anymore. Her care is now left to Terry Pegula. How do they phrase it?
What was 50-50 is no more. Terry is now the guardian of the person and the property over Kim. And these are according to Palm Beach County Circuit Civil Court documents that are dated February 13th, 2023, where Terry filed to have Kim ruled incapacitated and to be made her guardian. So Terry is still Kim's guardian, but what was 50-50 is no longer the case. She's incapacitated.
Her share, as I understand it's now in a trust, though.
That's correct.
Okay.
the longtime business collaborator, Bob Long, who's a partner with Terry, is listed as the co-trustee. So when those assets eventually are doled out, they will be the ones that are.
Wow.
Yeah.
So
they're the co-trustees.
So like when Kim finally is no longer with us, it's like, where does that's one of the many questions we have. But kind of going along with the story here too is, well, you have so Laura Pegula, and they do this in the NFL because that's what the NFL wants you to do. They want you to have a succession plan. Certainly. Like, you just can't, like, all of a sudden have the team. The NFL doesn't want what happened to the Broncos, where you have children squabbling. It happened actually with the Oilers, the Titans franchise, that Bud Adams didn't really have a clear plan. And they got that all squared away. But in Denver, they didn't, to the point where they actually had to put the team up for sale because nobody could agree on anything. So that is not what they want here in the National Football League. So what ends up happening? Well, 1% goes to the first daughter, okay, from the first marriage. That
Laura.
being Laura Pegula, who we had no knowledge of up until, really, in my opinion, last week when she was up on the podium. We always thought it would be Jessica, the pro tennis player. She's one of the best in the world, right? And we take great pride in here. But this is how Tim Graham writes it. And you tell me if he's inferring anything, okay? I'm just going to read it here. And he's quoting Jessica from her piece that came out last year. In the Players Tribune, where that was the first time where we actually kind of got the story. Quote, "My mom always wanted me to be involved. She always wanted me to learn and eventually do what she was doing." Meaning, okay, so Jessica is actually saying, I would like to kind of go and manage and take over, someday for mom. Within 3 months of the column, Tyler Gahagan, who, by the way, was married to Jessica Pegula, was fired, and Laura Pegula was given an equity stake in the Buffalo Bills. No other member of the Pegula family has commented publicly about Kim's condition. Wait a second. I didn't know this. The son-in-law of Terry Pegula, the son-in-law who's married to Jessica Pegula, Terry Pegula fired his own son-in-law? Why aren't we talking about this? Who does that?
You can also.
What did he do to deserve that?
You could also look at all of the firings that have happened since Kim fell ill, right? Like, you moved on from Rakuya.
Well, time out on that, because also we had Tim Graham on us and just like, Tim, why fire Ron Rakuya? What was his answer, Danger?
Terry didn't like him.
That was it. It was just that simple. Like, wait, that's it? That's the only reason he brought you a stadium? Terry didn't like him.
Terry didn't like him. You replaced him, and then you had to replace that guy because he was in a affair with lead counsel. Remember that story? And now you've steadied the ship, you hope, with Pete Welly. We're all hoping that Pete Welly does a great job. We're provincial, and we want the Rochester guy to succeed. But now you've got Laura in the mix. And this happened just 3 days after Kim became Terry's ward. Terry's daughter, Laura, represented the Bills at the NFL owners' meetings in Phoenix. And then the transfer of the small percentage of the Bills to Laura, just to satisfy that league policy that the NFL has in succession planning that you discussed. Nobody's talking about it. Nobody's commenting on it. Hey, look, it's their business. They don't have to.
Look, you could say, hey, you guys are diving into personal stuff. And I would say, okay, you're right on the one hand, but I'd also say this is not like any business. This is a public trust they bought into. If this were the family oil business, who cares? All right. If it were... Have you seen the show Succession? I'm 2 episodes in. I don't like any of these characters. Somebody tell me if I should continue on, because I keep hearing how great it is. And I'm like, who are these people? They're all aliens. I don't like any of them. But people tell me that the writing is fantastic on that. Danger, we have a succession thing going on in Buffalo with this.
We do. And it feels pretty clear in the direction that Terry is leaning here, that it's going to be Laura Pegula, not Jessica Pegula or any of the other 3 kids that he's had with Kim.
Is it fair to say, like, anything that has to do with Kim, whether that's one Buffalo, whether it's a son-in-law that got fired?
It's gone.
Yeah.
It's gone.
Is he just doing this to manage his own well-being? Like he's still married to Kim, but
it's a weird thing. I know that we want to like dive into why this happened. And I think you can connect some dots here pretty easily. Jess shares private family matters on a widely read website, the Players Tribune.
And she has her own platform because she's the star herself.
Yes. And the consequences of that are potentially what we're talking about today, that you're not going to have a part of this team, that it's going to be actually Laura, the 41-year-old, who's been a part of my business affairs in some way, shape, or form, kind of under the radar here. When you're dealing with half siblings, when you're dealing with sibling from one marriage versus siblings from another marriage, I can speak to this firsthand.
All right, so you're going to dive into this?
I can speak to this firsthand. Yeah. A lot of it depends on how amicable everything was with dad versus mom 1 or dad versus mom 2, how amicable things are with the stepmom, all of it. I can tell you my experience. My dad was married before he married my mother and had me. He had 4 kids. He proceeded, after he got divorced from his first wife, proceeded to meet my mom, marry my mom. We moved as far away from where he was and where his old family was as well. Let's just say that when you move to Grand Forks, North Dakota, you're hiding from something, or you don't move there because like, oh, there's opportunity. No, you're hiding from something. It's like moving to Alaska. And that's where I grew up. That's where we moved to. And my entire childhood was spent not really knowing of or anything about my 4 half siblings from my dad's first marriage. Part of that was my mom being very traditional and saying, look, this is our family. You divorced them. You married me. We have a son. We're raising him. You're not raising them anymore. You chose to divorce them and move here. And so it wasn't until I was about 18, 19 years old that I actually met one of my half brothers for the first time.
Can you back up just a second?
Sure.
When did you first learn, like, oh, wait a second, dad had another marriage?
I knew
How did that affect you?
I knew that when I was a kid because I always heard the bitching about the child support payments. And, my dad, God bless him, was always trying his best to make ends meet. But it was a struggle. And I heard a lot of that stress and anxiety secondhand from him. And I can't imagine doing what he did. In retrospect, I look at what he did, and I have my own family now, and I can't imagine just up and leaving everything that you have grown and built with a family of 4 kids and starting over and basically shunning them and leaving them out, aside from writing a check once a month. So I knew of them, but they were kind of they're being presented almost through the lens of they're the enemy. Not I hate putting it that way, but it was almost like I was kind of torn between my dad's feelings, my mom's feelings, and I just didn't really get involved until I became old enough to kind of understand and meet my half brother for the first time and my other half brother for the first time and a half sister who lives right up the thruway in Syracuse. And when I started to meet them, I'm like, they're not that different than me. They have similar features. We kind of are into the same things. It's not like the apple falls that far from the tree. So I'm sure that there are some similarities between Laura and the kids that Terry had with Kim, but there are plenty of differences as well. And I can say with fair certainty, I'm sure there's plenty of resentment that goes around when the 4 half brothers and half sisters all get together. There's probably a faction of 3 versus a faction of 1, if that makes sense.
Well, I can say this because we were all there. It's the Bills and Dolphins. And phew, this team's not moving to Toronto. Hey, and ladies and gentlemen, here they are, Terry and Kim Pagula and their children. Out come the 3 kids.
Right.
Like, there's always been like, wait a second. I know you were previously married and there's this other.
Right.
Yeah.
My guess is if Kim is anything like my mother, she probably didn't want anything to do with any remnants of Terry's first marriage. If I don't know if she's like I'm just making that assumption. I'm like, my mom wanted nothing to do with my dad's ex-wife, wanted nothing to do with my half-brothers and half-sisters until my dad finally said at some point when I was, a young adult, hey, this is important to me. It's important to me to make amends. I've let them down. I've shunned them for all these years in the spirit of raising our own family, but they are my family too. I need to reconnect. One of my other half-sister never reconnected with my dad. Never wanted to bury the hatchet. Just said, no. Do
you fault her for that?
No, I don't. I don't. I can't. I hear that and I'm like, yeah, that makes sense.
Does she then not connect with you then too?
I've never talked to her in my life.
Wow.
Never met her. Never talked to her in my life.
That's not the one in Syracuse.
No,
Okay.
the one in Syracuse and we get every time we get together, we get along fine. But it's a weird thing. I feel guilty because I feel like if they wanted to resent me, I would understand, and it makes me feel guilt. I feel guilt because I had a full childhood with them when they were kind of left behind when he divorced his ex-wife. And so, and so much so that I have a half brother who is going through his own marital issues right now. And I got to hang out with him just last summer in Chicago. I was in Chicago. I'm like, let's get together. They're in that area where my family is. And his now ex-wife reached out to me a few months after we got to hang out last summer and said, yeah, we're going through some stuff. We're going through some problems. And, one of the reasons why we're going through these problems is you're a trigger point for him. And I'm like,
today?
I'm like, okay.
What?
Well, then I will gladly just stay out of it. I'm not trying to cause any problems. I'm not trying, if we have a relationship, I'm cool. We're fine. I'm fine with that. You're family and you're blood. We're blood. We can't change that. But I also can't change how they feel about me. I can't change how I feel about my dad's ex-wife, who I've had the chance to meet now and since my dad has passed. And I'll just say this. It's not necessarily smooth sailing when you try to combine half brothers, half sisters from different marriages. And we don't know anything about Terry's first wife, right?
No, her name is Ann Shirley, according to Google. And apparently there's also a son somewhere along the name named Michael. I don't know anything about. So
we don't know anything about.
No,
right?
Don't know anything.
So I just, from my own personal experience, I hear these stories about the Pagulas and I think to myself, yeah, I can kind of see how there might be some resentment going on here and how Terry might have some guilt in one way, shape, or form in one direction or the other. Terry's dealing with a lot. And, probably the biggest thing that he's dealing with is a wife that I'm sure he loves that he has to take care of now moving forward.
I want to just correct something I said earlier because I said, hey, I didn't think that Laura Pagula wasn't there that day. She is in a photo, the first photo op. Okay, so she was, but she's not standing along next side of Kim. She's on the opposite side.
Sure.
I don't know if that's intentional or not.
Yeah. So it's a very fascinating story to see kind of how it's all going. But it paints a picture that could lead you to believe that when it's all said and done, the Bills might not be in the NFL or NHL ownership business in the long-term future.
Well, so you might say, well, what about Kim's 50%? Well, okay, that's part of it. But you don't have to have 50% to be the majority owner. We'll just kind of put it that way. They've lowered the threshold as long as you have the most, I guess. And the threshold being 30%. They kind of lowered the bar because of things like this. So at what point? I thought you would have at least given equal shares to the children. Okay, here, Matthew, you get 1%. Sydney, 1%. Jessica, I don't like what you said there in the Players Tribune. You get 1%. You only gave the 1% to the one daughter, which kind of leads the succession. Wait a second.
She's the only one that's fit to carry the baton when we move forward.
Yeah, and it's almost like, okay, Kim's not here. See, Kim's sudden illness just hit the fast forward button on everything.
Yeah.
Terry Pegula is 73. And if you have parents that are in their 70s or later, hey, I mean, you just got to enjoy every minute that you can. I hope that Terry Pegula is here 20 years from now and that we're going to be talking about old man Pegula and his Buffalo Bills. But the reality is that I always thought, well, with Kim being much younger, she's my age. Okay, that, hey, everything was going to be fine because here was a woman, a strong woman, one of the best leaders in sports today, and everything is going to be fine. And she's from Fairport. She went to Houghton. This is perfect. And then one summer morning, you look up and like, wait a second, what happened here?
Well, I think the lesson here for Jessica Pegula is businesses don't have feelings. We say this all the time, right? And when you air out laundry that makes your business look like 50% of its ownership is now weakened, that's bad for business. And you can't do that. Like, we all praised her for doing what she did. Very brave to do what she did, to share her feelings, for all of us to learn the truth of what that family is going through, what she is going through. And it looks like, I'm not saying that this is what happened, but it looks like that was not something that Terry was very fond of.
Well, right. And
the timing of it.
Terry, you know how, like you say, hey, those guys in Rochester, whoever else is full of us, then speak. Speak!
It's not going to happen.
No, I understand.
He'll speak. He's not going to take questions.
So you know what you do? Then when Tim Graham calls and asks for a sit down or whoever, or pull one of us aside and just get your story out here.
He doesn't have to.
He doesn't want to.
He doesn't want to. He doesn't have to. It's his business.
Aliens.
And right. And part of that business is building a stadium without spending any of his own money, which will go down as one of the most legendary gangsta moves of all time. I still can't believe it. It just doesn't make any sense. It makes zero sense.
Back to you. I got to ask one follow-up. Are you okay?
I'm good, man.
You have all these brothers and half-sisters that you have this wide array of, hey, I'm never going to talk to her, and I'm not sure about my relationship with the one half-brother. Like,
I won't say never because I don't know what the future looks like. Like, I really don't know. But I'm good. I love them. They're blood, man. How can I not? I love them because I know that when we do get together, we have laughs. When we do get together, we share stories. When we do get together, we get into some deep conversations about what their childhood was like, what my childhood was like. And you can't put enough emphasis on the importance of family. Because if it's not there, yeah, things can go a little awry. Things can go a little haywire. Feelings can get hurt. Wires can get crossed. I feel terrible. I feel guilty. I really do. Every time we talk, I feel guilty. And they tell me every time it comes up, you don't have to feel guilty. You don't have to feel bad. We're fine. You're fine. They'll say that their mom had my dad by the short hairs and that he had, to do what he had to do. And they did what they did. And they're all fine. They're all successful. They've all done well for themselves. But I just know that it's not clean. It's complicated. It can be complicated. And we're just a regular, middle-of-the-road American family. We're not billionaires running multiple major sports operations the way the Pegulas are and have been. So I imagine that you can take my complications and multiply them by 1 billion, and that's what you have with the Pegula situation right now.
Yeah, and for anybody who says this is a private you buy a pro sports team, you're in the public eye.
And when our money is funding the stadium?
Yes.
Yeah, we kind of should know what's going on, you would think. It's a lot of our money going towards the stadium that he's not paying for.
Under what circumstance, Mike Danger, say when your radio days are done and you're going to be running a business and you have 2 daughters and your son-in-law is in the family business, would you ever fire your son-in-law?
I don't know how to answer that.
I know. I mean, it's hard to imagine.
Right. I mean, I struggle with just the process of vetting my future son-in-law. Like, what does that look like? How happy does that person have to make my kid for me to say, all right, you're in? I don't know what that looks like. My daughter's only 20. She's not seriously dating anybody. There's time. But I don't know what that looks like. I'm struggling with that part of it, let alone the idea that somebody's in the family for a few years and they're working and we're all working together, and I fire that. I don't know that I would ever get that involved with family if it was my business. I don't know that I would. I think I wouldn't mix family with business, says the guy who works with his wife. But this isn't my business. This is Odyssey.
The only sports story I can say that kind of, that I could kind of pull from, and I'm not going to mention the school, but head coach, offensive coordinator engaged to the head coach's daughter. Boy, what could go wrong here? They fell in love. They met over thing. And then one day the offensive coordinator tells the coach's daughter that God said I cannot go through with this. And now you're 1 month away from the start of the season.
Yeah.
So what do you do if you're the head coach? The head coach says, I can respect your decision, but I think it would be best for all if you look for another job.
Makes sense. Let's get to a round of shots next.
Yeah, on a much lighter note, we got other sports happening here. Certainly, we've got game 3 tonight, I should say, of the best of 5 here between the Amherst and Syracuse. What kind of takeover might there be? We'll get to the NHL. Also, Charles Barkley. Like, what if TNT loses the rights to the NBA? And that show that we all love. What happens to that show?
It's the best show on TV.
Yeah, well, maybe not for long here.
We could send them to Galveston.
Galveston.
Dirty ass water. They think it's a beach. We'll get to a round of shots next. Last call before 6 o'clock as well. You can pull up a stool at 585-866-4FAN. 866-4326.
The Fan Rochester Sports Update.
The wait is over, Amherst fans. It's Game 3 tonight in Syracuse. The best of 5 tied at 1 game each. Head coach Seth Appert says he's going to have his team ready.
You really need to attack each game like it's his own game. But our guys, we've been good on the road all year. We've been good with our backs to the wall all year. We've been good in this building most of the year. So there's some confidence that you can draw from that, sure.
Don Stevens, Brian Duff will have your call beginning at 7 o'clock tonight here on The Fan Rochester. The Wings gave up 8 runs in the first, 4 runs in the 9th, 12-6 wound up being the final against Syracuse. Same 2 teams tomorrow. The Orioles over the Yankees today, 7-2 the final. Marlins over the Rockies, 5-4. Red Sox falling at home to the Giants by a 3-1 score. The Nationals getting shut out to the Rangers 6-0. And the Mets winning in 11 over the Cubs 7-6. Gene Battaglia, The Fan Rochester.
If you want pure, unfiltered, unadulterated sports, you've come to the right place. 95.7 FM, The Fan, Rochester.
You know, those are things you work on and you adjust. There's adjustments every game. They make adjustments, we make adjustments. Then something works for us and they adjust to that. Something works for them, we adjust back to that. So that's part of it. We were able to work in some things in practice, but some of that stuff is also just in video and the guys learning from that.
Amherst head coach Seth Appert tonight, Game 3, the Calder Cup playoff series against Syracuse in Syracuse. You'll hear that action on The Fan Rochester.
Yeah, and listen carefully. Is there going to be another Amherst fan takeover? I do know some people that are making the trek, and maybe you're right now listening in. How many people are making the throughway trek tonight? It happened last year in Game 5. Tyson Kozak said it looked like an Amherst building. Mason Yops said sitting in the locker room 1 hour prior, hearing the chant of "Let's go Amherst." That's one of his favorite moments since he's been with the team. Again, our coverage will begin tonight at 7.
What they need to do in Syracuse to prevent a total Amherst, takeover is what they've done in Philadelphia for tonight. I mean, just buy a block of tickets and make sure that those tickets don't wind up in the hands of the opposing team's fans.
Yeah, or
simple.
Or they can do what they're doing down in Raleigh. Hey, where's your credit card? Oh, 585. Yeah, I can't do that. It's got to be 315. The Hurricanes are actually doing this against the Rangers. This from Ticketmaster. PNC Arena is located in Raleigh. Sales to this event will be restricted to residents of North Carolina, South Carolina, and southern parts of Virginia. Residency will be based on credit card billing address. Only residents outside. They will be canceled without notice, and refunds will be given.
Yeah, I think it's a coward move. I get it. I mean, money's money. You're going to sell it out no matter what. It's not like you need 585 money or 212 money. The Lightning, I think, were the first that did this, right, with the Blackhawks back in the day.
Oh, yeah, and you've had the Broncos try to implement this. I mean, I don't know if we'll ever get to a part with, because the Sabres need to sell every ticket they can when the Leafs come in. Speaking of Leafs, that's the only game tonight, but woo, is it a doozy. Boston, Toronto, Game 6, Boston up 3-2. And since if there is going to be a Game 7, that'll be on ABC. Tonight's the last broadcast for Jack Edwards, Boston Bruins announcer. He retires after this.
He went after a ref in game, Game 5. There was a play at the end of the period, and Edwards just said, "And he's the first one off the ice." And he just stopped, paused, pregnant pause, and he says, "Coward!" He's called the ref the coward. I mean, like,
he says,
it's probably time, but I kind of dug that he called the ref a coward for being the first guy to leave the ice.
Former LA Dodger pitcher Julio Urias pled no contest to misdemeanor domestic battery charges tied to his September arrest. He's placed in 36 months of probation, and he will be ordered to complete 30 days of community service. If TNT loses the NBA, what happens to Charles Barkley?
Protect Chuck at all costs.
Yeah, where does he go? Well, maybe that show doesn't have much of a future here, Danger. Sports Business Journal saying that Charles, wherever he goes, he's going to set a record. Currently held by Tony Romo at $17 million. Charles in the NFL? Charles Charles a nightly show. Where are we going with it?
I want wherever it is, I'm paying attention. I mean, the best show on TV is TNT's NBA studio show. Barkley and Shaq. I mean, I don't want to. It's not even really Shaq. It's just all Chuck. Shaq is smart enough to set him up in a way that you're going to get the best of Chuck.
Disappointed in New Orleans. Where they going, Chuck? Galveston. That dirty ass water. We're not even gonna sit into Cancun. We're gonna sit into Galveston with that dirty ass water be washed up on the shore. You people think they're in the beach. Y'all gonna send y'all to Cancun. Y'all drive y'all quit. Drive your ass down to Galveston. Come on, man.
So they're not taking a little.
Come on, they didn't even try, man. No, we're not getting them no plane ticket to the beach. We send their ass to Galveston, Texas, right where that dirty water washed up on the beach. They can't even get in the water. Come on, man.
Worth every penny.
That has not burned out on me.
No.
I don't know if it ever will. And now, thanks, Chuck, when I go to Charlotte or Hamlin, where I'm going to think,
Oh, yeah.
dirty ass water.
He's describing Charlotte. He's describing Hamlin. He's describing Lake Ontario. We think we have a beach. We got that dirty ass water. We can't even. We think we're at the beach.
2 games tonight in the NBA. Come on, like the NBA. The tonight's feels like the NCAA championship game where they started late. We have Milwaukee and Indiana at 6:30 on TNT. And yes, for Milwaukee, still again game time decisions for Antetokounmpo and Dame time. It's the Pacers leading this best of 7 3 to 2, and then a scheduled 9:00 broadcast time tonight between the Knicks and the Sixers. The Knicks looking to close out Philadelphia up 3-2.
I mean, I guess if you're going to start a game at 9:00 on the East Coast, Philly is the town and Thursday is the night. I suppose that makes sense, but it's pushing it. It's really pushing it.
I would have put who cares about Milwaukee, Indiana? Put that on right now.
Right.
Honestly, oh my gosh, we got to watch the fight.
I still can't get over game time decisions.
Get out there.
Right.
Out.
Right.
Out. Did you not see Willis Reed? Never mind. Finally, according to Jalen Warren of the Steelers, special teams coordinator of the Steelers has a radical idea, Danger. I don't know if you saw this or not. Danny Smith, who, by the way, was Buffalo's special teams coordinator under Rex, is toying with the idea of having a new returner on kickoffs, that returner being quarterback Justin Fields. This is Section 5 football? We're going to put your quarterback returning kicks? What are we doing?
He's your backup quarterback, technically.
Okay, but how often does the kick returner get hurt? You would think you want him, he's the second most important guy on the team, really.
I can't crap on this idea. I really can't, because there's a part of me that's so curious to see what it would be like to have Justin Fields returning kicks and how good he would be at it.
Well, they remember who they brought in. They brought in Cordell Patterson. And I thought, okay. And these new rules, it's like when the NHL came out of the lockout, the Sabres were ahead of the curve. Do you remember that? And they took advantage of the new rules. Wow. The team that cracks the code first when it comes to the kickoff returns and how this should be set up and everything else, they're going to have an advantage. And when I look at teams and special teams coordinators, where do we put Matthew Smiley? How do we feel about Matthew Smiley with week 1? We don't blame Josh for that. That was really bad, that kickoff return. Or, hey, the end of that Bronco game. How many other special teams misfit plays for the Buffalo Bills last year?
No.
I'm actually kind of concerned about this.
And now you've got a brand new kickoff rule that's being implemented. Who's it going to benefit? I'm curious. Does Xavier Worthy return kicks? Because you could put the fastest guy on the field and hope that you can beat that new kind of wall of blockers that will happen here. I don't know, man. It'll be interesting to see, and that's part of why I can't call this a dumb idea, because I don't know what it's going to look like, and something tells me that Justin Fields would actually be really good at returning kickoffs, really good at it, because he's very evasive, he's very athletic, he has speed. If Cordero Patterson can reinvent himself from what he was to what he became in the NFL, why not?
It would also be an advantage, too, because, under what other circumstance does your backup quarterback actually play in a game? Doesn't happen. You wouldn't have to activate an extra returner here.
Right, because he's going to be a free agent after this year. I mean, they didn't pick up the 5th-year option. Wilson didn't get the 5th-year option picked up. None of these guys got their 5th-year option picked up. They're all guys that are on this trajectory to be backup quarterbacks for the rest of their NFL careers. We're going to come back with last call next at 866-4326-585, 866-4FAN. We've got the 150th Kentucky Derby right around the corner this week, and it's Saturday. FanDuel is the only sportsbook app where you can bet it. It's me, Danger, for FanDuel Sportsbook, the official partner of 95.7 The Fan. All customers can get a no-sweat Derby bet up to $20. That's right. You'll get up to $20 back if your Derby horse doesn't win. So, bet the Derby on the same app where you bet all your other favorite sports. FanDuel, you hear me talk about it all the time. Just download the app or go to FanDuel.com/Mike to score your no-sweat Derby bet up to $20 for the Kentucky Derby this Saturday. Again, FanDuel.com/Mike, M-I-K-E. 21 plus and physically present in New York. Verified FanDuel racing account required. Refund issued as non-withdrawable sportsbook bonus bets that expire 7 days after receipt. Restrictions apply. See terms at racing.fanduel.com. For help with a gambling problem, call 1-877-8-HOPE-NY or text HOPE-NY 467-369.
The sports leader, 95.7 FM and AM 950 The Fan, Rochester.
Last call on the Sports Bar with Danger and Battaglia on The Fan at 866-4326 goes to Luke in Rochester. Hey, buddy. Come on, Luke.
Hello. Hey, guys, that kickoff stuff is going to be really interesting because if you see how they were using it in that other minor league, whatever it is, there's only like 5 yards of separation for like blocking.
Yeah.
And then there's only the kicker back. He's the sole guy.
Yeah.
So there's going to be a lot of explosive plays where touchdowns are going to occur just because of that lineup. And don't be surprised if Keon there gets a chance to do some kickoffs because Bean was marveling at how he was able to field punts. The guy looks like he's bulldozer to me. So,
Luke. Yeah. Thanks for the call, Luke. I appreciate it. And boy, we haven't even talked about it. Who is going to be the role there? I would say this. Hey, I don't want to throw too much at the kid here. I would hope that they'd have another candidate to do, kickoff and punt returns. I don't think you would want your developmental number one to be doing that.
Give it to Cephas.
Yeah?
Fast. Yeah. Give it to the fast guy. Who's the fastest guy? I think that's what it's going to come down to. Who's the fastest guy? The fastest, shiftiest guy. It's not exactly like what the Bears had in Devin Hester that you're looking for here because I think you just need somebody that's really quick. Just really, really quick that can maybe break a tackle or two because I think blocking, it's going to be a fascinating watch. Luke is right. The blocking is going to be critical. The execution is going to be, it's going to need to be crisp. Otherwise, you could have some more big plays. Or you might just have a bunch of guys running into a wall of humanity every time there's a kickoff in the NFL. Nothing gets through. Fun show this afternoon. Spencer German and 92.3 The Fan in Cleveland. Our superhero of the spread, Thor Nystrom from Fantasy Pros and Betting Pros, stopped by in the 3 o'clock hour. We got his thoughts on the Bills 2024 draft class and some other questionable picks in last week's draft. If you missed either of those conversations, you can find us wherever you get your podcasts. That includes Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and, of course, the free-to-download Odyssey app, AUDACY. It's where we sound our best. Search out The Fan Rochester. Tomorrow, we kick off your sports weekend.
Yeah, and tonight, you want to listen to the Amerks tonight.
We've got the Amerks for you tonight. Streaming, you can hear it in the Odyssey app. Amerks in Syracuse, Game 3 of their Calder Cup Series, as the Amerks look to regain their advantage in that series, 7 o'clock tonight. Puck drop here on your proud home of Amerks Hockey, The Fan Rochester. JR Sport Brief next.
You're listening to the